say, we're living in challenging times, and I can remember being a much younger Kevin Miller and thinking to myself, how can I motivate people? How can I get people rolling? And I would always say, quite frankly, that when things get tough, when things get challenging, we always go back to our great ancestors. What an incredible history that we have in the United States of America when we're thinking about World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, all these issues where we beat the unbeatable, we did the unthinkable. And those folks had challenges. Those folks had all sorts of issues. And quite frankly, they made it through. And we take a look at ourselves and think, well, things are so uncertain. It's always been uncertain. Life is uncertainty. There is no, guarantee for just about anything. In fact, I can recall, again, during the pandemic of what a challenge it was for all of us. And yes, Donald Trump has his challenges, and we're supposed to believe that the vice president Kamala Harris is the greatest ever, and she's going to win. And you think to yourself, well, if we're that stupid, we get the government that we deserve. And then we have these reports that Kamala Harris is allegedly paying non-citizens $700 per week to attend rallies and to protest. I don't know if that is true, but there's so much information and disinformation. And like I said before, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, we have to be the watchers on the wall. We have to be the ones that proudly stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. We have to be the ones that say, God bless America, and mean it. Because there's too much cynicism, there's too much anger going around that is infecting all of us. In fact, over the weekend, many of us don't have HBO, but we watch the clips. We've become a place where we don't really listen to things or watch things for a very long time. It's clip, schmip, clip. And there's a comedian named Bill Maher, and Bill Maher is a liberal. And being a liberal means that he's not down with Donald Trump. And he started talking about the second assassination attempt against President Trump. Let's take a listen.
So let's not bury the lead. The big story this week, they tried to shoot Trump again. Let's not funny. Okay. I'm being serious now. This is the second time this happened. I said this before. There can be no fuzz on this. This is not funny. Okay? It's not okay. It's not okay to wish it happened.
See, but here these people are laughing. And you think to yourself, Bill Maher is being sarcastic. He's playing along. Actually, he's not. Look, the politics have gotten so toxic. Is that the words that the young people use, Sweet William? Toxic? That's what Bo says. It's gotten so toxic that they're laughing about another assassination attempt. Thank God that President Trump was not assassinated. Can you imagine the devastation it would have on our country? You think we're divided now.
Well, this is a problem. Well, I mean, look, this happens too frequently. I'm sorry. This happened on the golf course. A guy was laying in wait, and it happens too much. In fact, besides the shooter, there were two other shooters beside him waiting to play through. This has got to stop.
Well, and so what does Bill Maher do? He just goes along with it. But, we are living in historic times, and because we live in such an ADD world, sometimes I don't think that we get it. Phone number's here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. If you're a member of the App Yap Club, you saw, Friday night late, I published a story, the Wall Street Journal. Boise is the best city ever. Now, you don't have to have a subscription to the Wall Street Journal to read the piece. Really, once again, a glowing report on what to do in the city of Boise. To me, I thought, well, what about all the other places? Let's go to Paulie in Nampa with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Paulie.
Good morning, Kevin. You touched on a bunch of good stuff. You started talking about the wars. And, do you know who followed us up to come after us? It was the Chinese. We helped them in their country with the Flying Tigers against Japan that was invading them. And that was just previous to World War II. And they didn't come to our aid, but we came to their aid. And then, of course, World War II happened, and then Korea. And guess who backed up? Guess who backed up North Korea? It was the Chinese. They fought us, and we lost our men, servicemen, to the Chinese fighters. And this is after the Opium Wars. And then Vietnam happened after that. And guess who fought us again with the NVA? It was the Chinese. They've been after us all along. And now we've got this fentanyl, and this new and improved fentanyl that's taking us, our children away from us and killing them. And it seems to be never ending. And the theme on that is China doesn't love us, and we don't expect them to, but we sure as hell don't want them to kill us. And they're doing it. And it seems to me they're doing it with no impunity. This guy running for vice president with Kamala Harris, he's a commie, just like commies are commie. And I find this unacceptable as an American citizen. Every commie on this planet is out to get the United States, who is number one, ever since we started. And it's just not enough. They just keep coming at us in many different ways, many different lights. But it's
look, they're working with the illegals and everybody else as well.
Exactly. But I did want to touch on a lighthearted note, and that was the Bronco victory on Saturday night.
Wait a minute, you're going from the Chinese to Boise State?
Well, I wanted to talk about the Boise State game, but you started talking about this other stuff, and it got me started. You got me started, Kev.
All right, Blue Chaos, keep going.
So anyway, that was a great game, and it wasn't because it was 72-14 or whatever it was, but most of the fans, the ones that they can call themselves fans, were still there. The ones that knew it was a blowout and there was no way they could come back and beat the Broncos, they left. And I understand that. I understand that thinking of Dodger Stadium, where they leave with, in the top of the sixth inning. I know that feeling. Not because I experienced it, but because I watched it on TV against the Giants. But nevertheless, what I wanted to say was, it really touched my heart that the band played, before they played the national anthem, they played God Bless America. And I've heard some renditions before, but that was one of the best I've ever heard. I've heard Kate Smith. I've heard Ethel Merman. I've heard Jamie Foxx do his imitation of
Fred Biletnikoff?
No. One of the greatest voices of all times. They did a movie about him about 10 years ago. Jamie Foxx did his movie.
Oh, Ray Charles.
Yeah, Ray Charles' version is just the absolute best. And if anything ever happens and somebody decides to change the national anthem, I suggest that they change it to that. And that rendition, because it is America the Beautiful, the way he sings it. And it was great to hear the band do that at the game. And then they followed it up with the national anthem. And most of the people stood and put their hand over their hearts for both of those songs. And it was just, it was heartening to hear that and to watch that and to be a part of that. And, it was a fun game to watch. The play calling by the Broncos was exquisite. In the first half, I couldn't get enough of the way they called it. And they didn't key on Genty. They didn't make Genty the central figure, which I wasn't exactly sure why, but the Broncos did just fine with him not playing every single play. And the guy that was throwing the passes did a wonderful job, the quarterback. But Fred Biletnikoff, Freddie the Fingers, is always going to be my favorite.
All right, Paulie, we appreciate the call.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You have a great day, Kevin.
You as well. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Congratulations to the Boise State Broncos. 56. I thought, it was 56-14 over Portland State. Of course, Washington State coming to town. That game will be on FS1 at 8 o'clock Mountain Time. Phone number's here, 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Appreciate Paulie talking about the big game. If you want to sound off about that. Your wish is my command. It's probably better than listening to what this guy has to say.
Are you worried about rising tensions in the Middle East?
Yes, I am, but we're going to do everything we can to keep a wider war from breaking out. And we're still pushing hard. Thank you.
Pushing hard for what, Mr. President? Well, we'll get back to that. By the way, from the Babylon Bee, because it's too early to be frowning and turn that frown upside down. Remember, the Babylon Bee is a Christian site like The Onion, but it's very, very well done, very well creative. So remember when the vice president would not answer a question. When you ask her something about the economy, well, I was a middle-class kid. I was raised by my mom, and we lived in a neighborhood. And the neighborhood had grass. Now, I know not all neighborhoods have grass, but the people there actually used the Zamzows product. And they loved Jim Zamzow. And Jim Zamzow was a great part of our lives. Now, if I'm president, we're going to have that Jim Zamzow-like effect. See, remember, Zamzows, they do a great job with the yards, with their products. In fact, I was talking to my neighbor Robin. He's all about the Zamzows product, getting ready to put it to sleep. If you're new to the Treasure Valley, check them out today. But in the theory of that, here's the story from the Babylon Bee. A local man was completely stumped while questioning his wife about an issue with one of the family's vehicles, having apparently been caught off guard by the wife's insightful and engaging response. So well written. Trent Colson explained that he arrived at the park to meet his wife and kids, only to find his wife's car on fire in the parking lot, prompting him to rush to make sure she and the couple's children were safe and find out what happened. And his wife responded, "I was born into a middle-class family." Beth began, "Where I come from, car fires are the very least of our concerns. What is far more important is putting food on the table, keeping the lights on, and knowing your family has a safe home. If it is these things that people across the country are focused on, not a vehicle engulfed in flames in the driveway." What a great analogy compared to our economy and the world that we know it today. We have the vice president. She's focused in on telling us about her mom and her background. And by the way, didn't she live in Canada for most of her youth? Trent later said that he was left off balance by his wife's articulate and nuanced answer. Quote, "I hadn't really ever thought about it that way," he said. "While I was caring so much about learning why the car was on fire, I was completely ignoring the fact that she was born into a middle-class family. That answer blew me away. It changed everything. I saw the situation in a completely different light." Doesn't it sound like the people that have chosen to go on the Kamala bandwagon? At publishing time, following Beth's widely praised response to his question, Trent has reportedly left the conversation with a newfound respect for his wife and was completely unconcerned about the flaming vehicle in the parking lot. Yeah, I can see that, can't you? You can't see that where people are going, well, she seems like a nice lady. She cackles a lot. Can we say cackle anymore? We really can't say that at all. Think about that for a moment. By the way, over the weekend, some of the shows, let's take a listen. Jake Tapper going toe-to-toe with Gretchen Whitmire. By the way, I know that there are a lot of people that do this. And have you noticed that people with not plump posteriors, don't say that she has a plump posterior, Sweet William. We do not need the National Organization of Women contacting us today. What's that, Bo? You don't know what the National Organization of Women is? Is that a place is that like Tinder for old people? No, the National Organization of Women, Bo, is not please, Sweet William, quit talking to my ear while I'm trying to tell Bo, please quit talking to my ear while I'm talking to Sweet. What I'm saying is we can't talk about anybody's former plush posterior. Now, I don't know really what Gretchen Whitmire is doing. By the way, she's the governor of Michigan. I'm trying to really have a serious conversation here about what happened on one of the Sunday shows, CNN's State of the Union. So, Gretchen Whitmire, by the way, what I'm saying is her face is shrunken. And I don't want to say that people are on the Zempic, but if not, she has really hit the gym. Now, unlike your plump host, you have a lot of people that all of a sudden are in shape. They have the shrunken faces, and sometimes they, look, we have people that advertise on this station that, you want to get your face fixed, you can get your face fixed. And you look at her and you go, wow, she's got the dyed hair, got the the face all shrunk. And I thought to myself again, because this show's about opinion, maybe she's on, some type of weight loss drug, which she didn't need. But a lot of people are doing that. We have a lot of people that at one time were maybe a little overweight, not morbidly obese like me, that are on the drugs that are doing wonders for them. Anyway, that having been said, let's take a listen to how she responded to Jake Tapper saying, what's the mood of the campaign?
Weeks left until this is all over. We've heard other Democrats in your position suggesting that they want to see more from Vice President Harris and Governor Walz in terms of not necessarily speeches in controlled environments, but town halls with voters, more interviews, mixing it up, press conferences. We're only 44 days to the election. Do you agree? Would you like to see more of that?
I have incredible confidence in both the Vice President and Governor Walz. They have shown that they are happy warriors. They are able to answer tough questions, and they are eager to get back into the debate.
Only a few weeks left.
Okay, Jake Tapper, thank you. Now, my point being, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, the liberal progressive lackeys in the media have made it so easy for the Vice President and Governor Walz, I know his name is Walz, but we'll go Governor Walz, that they don't need them. There is no need to have a town hall where Kamala can drop the ball or Walz can do the Minnesota waltz and waltz his way off the stage because they're so in the tank. What they're trying to do right now is to say to themselves, we don't need you. And the media, unless they turn on them, they're probably right. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. The state of the republic. We're rolling. Kevin Miller, good morning. Wonderful things. What we are talking about today is the state of the presidential race. Paulie calling in, giving us his Boise State Bronco report. We appreciate that. You want to talk about the team, big game this week coming up, Boise State, Washington State, 8 o'clock, Fox Sports 1. And, Washington State struggled to beat San Jose State. What was it, 54-52 or 52-50 in like triple overtime. But that's the magic of college football. And, of course, that's the magic of being in the Treasure Valley. The Broncos have not been this hot in quite some time. If they beat Washington State, they probably are they're the odds-on favorite to go to the Group of 5 playoff, which would be huge. And congratulations to everybody on the team, especially our great friend Jeremiah Dickey, the athletic director, and, of course, everybody that works behind the scenes. The athletes get a lot of praise and a lot of attention. And again, I still haven't gotten over people making $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 to play college football. But the people that work, as I said before, we talked about it on Friday. Big ups to the gig workers. I know our friend security guard Mike was working the game. I know a lot of people were working the game. And maybe as relating to athletes gets further and further from our minds, or at least this little beanie baby mind, the people that did, drive the Uber, the Lyft, or that did the DoorDash or what have you, that really made it a great weekend so people could celebrate. Thank you for your work. And maybe you're back at work. You worked all weekend. Now you're working. Thank you. And I know that Joe Biden really appreciates you paying those extra taxes. Whoa. Let's get you to work safely and on time. KIDO Talk Radio Traffic with dashing and perhaps dangerous Dave Burnett. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Kevin. From the Idaho Pizza Company studio, traffic now looking at 15 minutes or less coming in from Canyon County north side, eastbound down to the connector area, another 5 into downtown Boise or out toward Gowan Field. Get paid to bank when you open a new checking account at Horizon Credit Union. Put some extra cash in your pocket. Visit hzcu.org/get paid to find out how. That's your traffic now. I'm Dave Burnett on KIDO Talk Radio.
436 580 KIDO. Coming up, an Idaho bar owner says that he got the boot from his church for being conservative. Before that, Idaho native Jeff Choate, the head coach of Nevada, who had 8 penalties against Eastern Washington. But again, anytime you can get one of the more colorful coaches, why not take a look? And again, Jeff Choate worked for Chris Peterson, was at Texas, back at being a head coach after he was at Montana State. Let's take a listen.
The bonehead, and candidly, I'm not sure if that's warranted. I mean, we're celebrating with our fans. We're not taunting the opponent or whatever. But that's the rules, so, hey, we got to learn from that. Like when we get an interception, hand the ball to the official and come to the sideline so our offense can go play and not on a long field, right? That's the example there, right? Because there's 4 guys that got UAS penalties on that all, if they got their second one, they would have been ejected from the game. So that's stupid, right? So a lot of guys are going to be doing 500 push-ups tomorrow, and that's just the way it's going to be. And until we figure this out, we're going to continue to hurt ourselves. Now, hey, I can't control whether they're going to call a hold on a touchdown on the perimeter. A guy gets a hand up in the face, and that's part of football. And, those guys got to throw the flags, and we got to go operate. But we got to just continue to play with better discipline.
That should be the message in politics. If you mess up, you're going to do 500 push-ups the next day. If you mess up on getting a fact incorrect, can you imagine Tim Walz or Kamala Harris trying to do 500 push-ups? No, you're going to do 500 push-ups until you give us your economic plan, which apparently the vice president says that she's going to give to us this week. Sure she is. Won't it be just, as they said, more of the same? It's amazing how much power the legacy media still has because, quite frankly, they've rewired the vice president, Kamala, as the candidate of change. And really, she's just more of the same. They say to everybody, we're not going back, to lower gas prices? To a feeling of optimism where the world wasn't being blown up? I think that's pretty good. I'd like that. I'd like to be able to go to a social gathering, which I did yesterday, and not have people worried about if the world's going to blow up. You take a look at what's going on in Israel, and, the Democrats, because you have a lot of people that are not down with Israel, they're saying, what are they saying? They're saying, we're pro-Israel, but we don't like Netanyahu. Netanyahu's got to go because he's not negotiating with the terrorists that want to kill him. The logic or the mislogic of it all. Hey, before we get rolling, I want to let you know a very serious message here. Are you or someone you know struggling with hearing loss? Hey, it's Kevin Miller with a quick message from Hearing Connection. Don't wait any longer to get the help that you need. If left untreated, it can lead to social isolation and depression. That's right. Hearing loss is very, very serious. And you don't want to have an increased risk in developing dementia. Hearing Connection is now offering a 30-day risk-free trial of the latest and greatest hearing aids, the Signia AX. Don't let hearing loss hold you back any longer. Call now for a free hearing evaluation and a risk-free trial of the new Signia AX. Call 208-488-3255 today and start enjoying life to the fullest again. That's Hearing Connection, 208-488-3255. Nothing to mess around with when we're talking about your hearing. And obviously nobody wants to get dementia. Nobody wants to be socially isolated. Nobody wants to be depressed. Well, Kevin, I listen to your program all the time and you're depressing. Well, hopefully in an entertaining manner. Again, that number again for Hearing Connection, 208-488-3255. Back to this issue involving the bar. Now you're going to go, well, Kevin Miller, I bet I know which bar you're talking about. Yes, that's right. Wait for it, everybody. The Old State Saloon, which now they have a sign up there. They have a big giant eagle. It is in Eagle, Idaho. And you know that you've made it big when Redstate, a conservative website that we proudly subscribe to, has decided to tell your story. We'll say his name is Matt Funicello, wrote this story, and this is opinions expressed by the contributors of Redstate. Here is the headline. Idaho bar owner who defied the left gets excommunicated from his own church for defending Christianity. That's right. Mark Fitzpatrick is no longer a stranger to controversy, and they talk about the Old State Saloon. Remember, he had Hetero Month. They've done a couple of other things. They've went to the Pride. They've gotten kicked off Facebook, and they're holding. They've really made it a conservative gathering place where they brought in podcasters from across the country. They even had the former congressman from North Carolina, the young man in the wheelchair. They brought him in a couple weeks ago, and he was praying there. And it's really become a place of God, guns, and Trump, as they describe it outside. Fitzpatrick is a recent conservative California transplant to Eagle. He is a strong and passionate conservative and Christian and is very active in his church, which he helped establish when he and his wife moved to Eagle 6 years ago from Southern California. And they talk about his success and everything else and how everything is, working out. And they talk about how the Old State Saloon is doing this, that, and the other. And then all of a sudden, apparently, And by the way, those of you that used to live in California, he has Rest in Peace California trivia featuring himself along with a puppet named Mini Gavin Newsom, where groups of people in teams of 4 compete in a question game in which California laws and politicians were made fun of, and the winners of a raffle would win a firearm that was donated by a local gun shop. So he's stirring things up, which in America, you can stir things up. In America, you can do what you want. Well, Mark and his wife, according to Redstate, they got an email from their church. Now, I read this article and I couldn't find the name of the church. So the pastor CC'd his wife in the email because she needed to be aware of the implications of the efforts that Mark's activity at the Old State Saloon, according to this article, could have on her and her family. He viewed the email not only as questionable, but as a threat because pastors did not elaborate on the exact violation of the Bible that they accused him of. All they could tell him was that his events were divisive and dangerous, but could not definitely point to specific teachings of Christianity that Mark had violated, whether it was a personal preference of the pastors. Now, many people have been tough on churches. I know good old Charlie Kirk has said that churches need to be militarized, that churches are nothing more than elaborate social clubs, some people have said. However, this is pretty big because if you look at what Mark Fitzpatrick has done, and we've been to the Old State Saloon. By the way, I ran into a young lady the other day that said, I saw you there. He's not violating anything. He's not violating any tenets of Christianity. After sending the email, the pastors then contacted Mark and said, I'd like to meet you in person. Now, this is June Hetero Month. By the way, I believe on an unrelated note, the pride flags are still up in Boise. Is it going to be Pride Year here in the Treasure Valley in Boise? They wanted to meet with him to discuss what Mark thought was going to be a resolution and a closure. Probably no. To me, it sounds like when the boss hauls you in, it's never good. Remember, the boss never, you never get hauled in to get a pat on the back with the boss, do you? Here at KIDO Talk Radio, that's never happened. A kick in the rear? Yeah, but never a pat on the back. So Mark and his family go to the church, and according to Redstate, they told him that because they viewed these events as the bar as divisive and dangerous, he was to stop doing them. If he refused, Fitzpatrick would be removed from the church. So Mark, being the smart dude that he is, said, okay, what did I do that was a sin? How was I sinful? Instead, again, according to Redstate, they said, you need to go. And by the way, what do you think Mark did? Mark, a passionate Christian, said to himself, look, I'm not going to back down. After the meeting, Mark and his family went to the church as they normally would have, but were told to leave and that he was no longer welcome on the church property. See, again, I don't believe that that Redstate would lie on this one at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And maybe some people, maybe the intrepid people that actually care about news are listening to this program, because really it's the only thing of relevance on. Not that we do a great job, but it's the only thing of relevance on so early in the morning. And maybe they'll pick up on the story. I doubt that they subscribe to Redstate because they're all liberals. However, did Christ teach us to give people the boot if we disagreed with him? 580-5436, 580-KIDO. So you go to church, and unlike Kevin Miller when he goes to church, because Kevin Miller has one dress code, that of a guy in his mid or late or whatever, 50s or 60s or 70s, pick your age with me, looking for a kickball tournament, or as a tribute to Jerry Garcia. So you go to church, and they go, get out. Okay, doesn't Christ tell us to forgive the sins, to love the sinner, and hate the sin? What sin did this guy do? Mark believes that his church wrongly cast him aside and feels that they have failed him and his family by failing to address how he sinned. I'd love to know the name of the church. Think about that. Liberals, specifically the LGBT community, describe Fitzpatrick as evil. The lengths they have gone to cancel him, shut down his business, and more are some of the very tactics that his church has used against him. Both of them have failed, however, as the bar has flourished with media coverage and attention it has garnered. By the way, this is again from Redstate. You can check that out at redstate.com here on KIDO Talk Radio. Matt Funicello, I believe is how you pronounce his name. But getting back to this, if you're one of these people that worry about the days gone by, Old State Saloon continues with the Old State Saloon Cast, hosting the monthly Rest in Peace California Trivia and many, many more. I'm sure Mark will find another church, but what church would do that? Does that sound like something that really would be appropriate? And if that's the case, then if the churches aren't going to stand up for people, if the churches aren't going to, take a stand, then really what's the deal? You're going to kick somebody out because they're divisive? Go read the Federalist Papers. Go do any of those things. This country was founded on dissent. It was founded on people being uncomfortable. Have we gotten so used to air conditioning? Have we gotten so used to heated seats and, windows that you press a button and they go up? You've never lived until you had to roll up a window. You've never lived until you've had to roll up a window. That you're going to kick somebody out because they stand up for their own beliefs?
I'm going to be giving a speech that is really just to outline my vision for the economy.
Can't really hear her, and she says she's going to outline her vision for the economy. Thankfully, we'll have Sean Hannity to answer to that coming up. Sean will give us his complete analysis and opinion, plus take your calls today at 1 live on KIDO Talk Radio.
KIDO Talk Radio. The conservative underground meets right now. This is the Sean Hannity Morning Minute.
And now she's offering a path to amnesty, and she doesn't have to answer any questions about it or her support for reparations. Where's the money going to come from and who's going to be eligible? How about a couple of simple questions? We'll start there. Her support for what is the largest tax increase in the history of the world and the history of America, too? How do you afford a $93 trillion Green New Deal that she sponsored with Bernie Sanders in the U.S. Senate, and that she would eliminate the filibuster to pass this thing and shove it down America's throat, which would be the end of capitalism as we know it? Or the fact that she sponsored with Bernie government health care for all and called for the elimination of all private health insurance. So much for the Freedom and Joy Party.
Check out the Sean Hannity radio show later today, right here.
Firearms, they're a great protection. But as a gun owner, you got to consider firearms as a last resort. Do you really want to pull the trigger and then deal with the financial, mental repercussions? The answer has to be no. You need to start with the less lethal option. That's Byrna, B-Y-R-N-A. Now, the Byrna less lethal pistol launcher was designed by gun owners because Byrna wants to save lives while also creating a product that confidently protects those concerned with personal safety. The Byrna pistol launcher is equipped with powerful deterrents, tear gas, kinetic rounds, and it has a 50 to 60-foot range. It's amazing. And the Byrna launcher can incapacitate an attacker for 30 to 40 minutes. Now, the Byrna launcher is legal in all 50 states. There's no background check needed. There's no permit needed. And they'll ship it directly to your door. Now, don't start with deadly force. Start with less lethal force. Go to byrna.com/Hannity. 10% off any purchase. That's byrna.com/Hannity, and make the smart choice for your family's safety today.
Thank you, Sean. Don't forget Clay and Buck right before Sean, right after us on KIDO Talk Radio. Let's go to AJ in Caldwell with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, AJ.
Hey, did you say the guy's name is Mark that has the saloon that's got kicked out of his church?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, he's welcome to Caldwell Christian Church. And we don't have any problem with people speaking their mind. Even our pastor does this. And so he would be right at home. He's welcome to come. And, heck, I wish maybe I'll get in touch with the guy. But, wow, that's really sad. When a church does that, that's just over the top. Yes, we're supposed to have freedom of speech, and especially if he's speaking what is right. For goodness sakes, he's supposed to be allowed to do so. And he may have spoke to a few people in the, in the church themselves, and they may have complained to the pastor about it or what have you. that isn't going to happen in our church. We're all doing that.
What do you make of just this troubling allegation, though?
Well, I don't, know much into it. I know a lot of times people will accuse people of things, and when you actually delve into the facts on it, you find that it wasn't made, like in such a way that it could have even been flippant. It's not even a real thing, or it could have just been made in jest. But who cares? I mean, we're all Christians. We all know we're sinners. We'll make mistakes, and that's the reason why you have church. You get back into the roots of God, and you're fine.
Yeah, but where the pastor said, hey, you're not welcome here, and you're thinking, well, wait a minute. Well, what did I do that was against the law? What did I do that was sinful? Now, you could say that Mr. Fitzpatrick is provocative, but being provocative is not a way of, not grounds to dismiss somebody from their faith. I mean, Christ, tells us to take in all the sinners, the thieves, the
right.
pimps, the prostitutes, everybody.
Yeah, sure. I mean, he is without sin cast the first stone. I mean, this is just, it's ridiculous. But anyways, Caldwell Christian Church, come on down. We'll take care of him.
Fair enough. Thank you very much, AJ. Appreciate the call. Phone number's here, 580-5436. 580-KIDO. You get kicked out of your church for your political beliefs in America, in Idaho. Love to get your thoughts on that. Coming up, Jonathan Savage will join us from, I would say, the Middle East, but London, closer than we are, with the latest concerning Ukraine. And, of course, is Israel going in? And will Hamas and Hezbollah finally feel the pain? All that and more as we wake up on the right side. Thank you for joining us. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. 580-KIDO. So, again, we get ready for the election. Of course, what is it next week? It's going to be J.D. Vance versus Tim Walz. It's going to be fun. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be, who in fact wins the big enchilada. And if Kamala Harris wins, it's going to be because of the news media. The news media was so enamored with her that they haven't made it any of a consequential value if she in fact doesn't do a town hall meeting. Now think about this. Here we have a woman that 8 months ago was a joke. 8 months ago they were going to give her the boot and put in Gavin Newsom. They didn't give her the boot, and now she's wonderful. And you got to wonder, was Joe Biden just that bad? Was Joe Biden just that horrendous?
Whoa.
They're trying to say that Kamala is the same thing as Obama.
Thanks, Obama.
We all lived through Obama. She ain't no Obama.
Thanks, Obama.
No. We remember Obama.
Thanks, Obama.
Obama. She is not Obama. By the way, if you're just tuning in, you can miss any part of the show and still catch it on demand by our podcasting. Just go to anywhere you get a podcast, even YouTube. That's right, YouTube. No, you're not going to see us as we appear every morning, but you are going to see a nice, really, what do they call that, false advertising, where I'm in a suit and I have my short hair and I'm clean shaven. I'm actually smiling in that. But, that's how we appear to be. How we really are is something very different, but you can get us on YouTube as well. Just look for Kevin Miller Show. If you missed it, we were talking about Mark Fitzpatrick, the Idaho bar owner at Old State Saloon, who has been booted from his church for defending Christianity. Yes, it's true. Oh, it's darn true. Thankfully, we're not going to boot you. We're going to hear what you have to say each and every morning from 5 to 10. KIDO Talk Radio Traffic. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Kevin. From the Idaho Pizza Company studio, traffic now really looking pretty good as you're coming out of Candy County into Ada County. No major problems or accidents to get in the way. Working an injury accident on Karcher just west of Marketplace in Candy County. Dealing with backed up drains that can be costly. Perfect Plumbing, Heating, and Air will clear your drain for just $29. Call today and schedule. CallPerfectNow.com. That's your traffic now. I'm Dave Burnett on KIDO Talk Radio.
And our theme for today, Trump versus a sock puppet. How is this race even close? 580-5436. 580-KIDO. This week on Meet the Press, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, who I've actually met in person. Nice guy. was questioned about Kamala Harris, and he said, look, it was a coup. And thinking about it, she's lost every primary. She was a joke. Now it's like repackaging new Coke. Lindsay, what say you?
I think Nebraska has been talking about this for years. It is a very close election. 63 days ago, Chuck Schumer led a coup to overthrow Joe Biden, and he's telling me or any other Republican what we should be doing. If they change the law in Nebraska, it won't be on the phone in the middle of the night. It will be through a democratic process. The entire federal delegation of Nebraska, House members and 2 senators, want this change. To my friends in Nebraska, that one electoral vote could be the difference between Harris being president or not, and she's a disaster for Nebraska and the world.
I hear you calling it a coup. Of course, Democrats have the right to change who's at the top of the ticket.
So does Nebraska.
Here's the deal. This has never happened before in the history of the Republic. It has never happened before.
No.
I know, Joe. It's going to be over for you very, very soon. You can go home and hang out with Jill and go spend hours at the beach without your shirt on, looking at the waves, pondering you do that already, and we're paying for it. Well, there's a great return on investment. Coming up next, the latest from Fox News Media, brought to you by our friends at Beacon Plumbing. They say, stop freaking, call Beacon Plumbing today. We love Beacon Plumbing, and when you need a plumber, call them. BeaconPlumbing.net is their website. More coming up. Kevin Miller, another national media outlet, says Boise is the best city ever. Well, if you live in Nampa or Homedale or Mountain Home, you probably go, not so or our friends in Emmett, right? Emmett's such a great place as well. Joining us now, Jonathan Savage. He lives in London, allegedly. Good morning, Jonathan.
Hello, good morning. I live in London, exiled from Scotland, but it's not a bad place to be exiled to be honest.
Well, you guys at Fox News Radio, you get around, and obviously we're going to save our wrestling roundup for the end of the broadcast. But before we get to the latest in your beloved Squared Circle sport, what's the latest going on in Israel? The action is heating up, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's been a really intense day in Lebanon, where Israeli warplanes have been carrying out extensive airstrikes. Over 300 Hezbollah targets have been hit. Hezbollah, the Islamist militant group which opposes Israel's existence and is backed by Iran. The Ministry of Health in Lebanon says 182 people have been killed. Israeli defense forces have been urging people to get away from any houses or buildings which are used by Hezbollah. Even mobile phones, cell phones in southern Lebanon have been pinging with text and voice messages from the Israelis warning people to leave those villages where Hezbollah is operating and storing weapons. It appears as though this campaign of airstrikes focused on southern Lebanon is likely to spread further north.
Yeah, and again, as we've talked about, you have everybody expecting the Israelis to go in.
Yeah, this is, I think, what people are thinking now, because if you look at what Israel's goals are, they're trying to push Hezbollah back from the border with Israel so that 60,000 displaced Israelis can return to their homes without fear of regular rocket attacks on their communities. And to do that purely by airstrike is something which is going to be very difficult to achieve, I think, to push back Hezbollah ground troops purely using airstrikes. So a lot of analysts are saying that Israel is moving in the direction of a ground offensive, something which I think will chill people in world capitals, people who have been hoping that this conflict doesn't escalate, that things calm down and reach the sort of uneasy peace that we have seen at times. The problem for Israel is that they haven't necessarily had a good record of ground invasions in Lebanon over the years. They've never really been able to change the strategic situation in the region. They've never been able to change the narrative, but clearly they feel they can do so now.
Well, and then we take a look at, obviously, Benjamin Netanyahu says they have no choice. They want the Israeli people not to be bombed out of their livelihoods. And then you have these missiles that are firing all the time. And it's amazing to me that even though Israel has hit southern Lebanon pretty hard, that Hezbollah is still firing missiles.
Yeah, Hezbollah is described often as the best armed non-state military in the world, said to have tens of thousands of rockets and missiles supplied and funded by Iran. So Israel has been trying to take them out, not just take out those rockets and missiles, but take out their rocket launchers and missile sites as well to limit Hezbollah's abilities. But these are clearly widespread abilities. Hezbollah launched 150 rockets into Israel over the weekend. It's been firing rockets into Israel on a daily basis pretty much since October 8th last year, the day after the Hamas massacre in southern Israel. So Hezbollah with 20, 50, maybe as much as 100,000 personnel is not going to be an easy foe to take down.
No, indeed. And then, of course, we have to worry about the Iranians, the Saudis. Let's start with the Iranians, the usual suspects.
Well, Iran is the country with its fingers in all of the pies. It is the main backer, the establisher of Hezbollah in Lebanon. Back in the 80s, it set up Hezbollah to oppose Israel, and it set up Hamas in Gaza. It funds and supports them. Islamic Jihad also in Gaza and elsewhere, and other groups based in Iraq and Syria, smaller groups which have over the last year attacked U.S. military bases. Iran carries out its foreign policy by proxy, essentially. It calls it an axis of resistance against Israel. So in many ways, there could become a reckoning where the international community will have to decide how to respond to Iran's broader offensive on Israel that it carries out using these other groups.
And finally, we take a look at any of the other players in that region.
Yeah, an important player recently has been Saudi Arabia, who you mentioned earlier. The U.S. government, the Biden administration, one of its main foreign policy goals has been to try to normalize relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. The Saudis is a wealthy country, it's a powerful country with a big military, and to have normal relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia, it was seen as a way of trying to improve Israel's security by giving it essentially regional political diplomatic credibility. What Saudi Arabia have been looking for are security guarantees from the United States, a formalized agreement that the U.S. would help Saudi Arabia's defense. But the war in Gaza has caused problems because it's made it harder for Saudi Arabia to make a deal with Israel, made it less willing to make a deal with Israel. So Saudi Arabia remains an important player in the region, but its role in the future is somewhat uncertain.
And finally, Mr. Savage, anything we should be looking out for in your beloved squared circle?
I mean, where are we? We're coming up to the Bad Blood WWE pay-per-view. It looks like Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes will be teaming up extraordinarily after going head-to-head in the WrestleMania main event. I mean, that's going to be a sight worth seeing as the bloodline continues to shift and move in all directions, and Roman Reigns looks to establish himself as the original tribal chief once again. I mean, that is absolutely worth putting down your newspaper, turning off your news websites, not quite turning off your radios, turning down your radios and turning on your TV to watch.
Well, just don't mess with the Judgment Day because, you know, our boy Schmelz, he gets jealous when we talk too much wrestling.
I know. Well, I mean, Brian Schmelz is himself a fearsome competitor in the radio world, and I would not want to cross him. He's a good lad, and he's got good taste in wrestling.
I would refer to him as the Daniel Garcia of Fox News Radio.
Wow, I mean, I think that's a compliment, but I don't know if you'll see it that way.
My man, Jonathan Savage, our Drew McIntyre. Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Take care. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. I know, we just love the wrestling, if you will. Let's go to Russell and Star with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Russell.
Hey, Kevin. A few comments about the subject matter you brought up. You just really swung open the door here with the Old State Saloon situation and this fellow Mark in his church. So I'd like to make a few comments that I, as I said on my last call, these are words that are not permitted to be spoken, and I think that's what the Old State Saloon is actually doing The churches don't speak. They don't get involved in politics. They don't get involved in the power structure of America, and they don't because of the 501(c)(3) corporation and their tax exempt status. But here's a few things that I'd like to say from the perspective of Russell from Star. The American churches in general are apostate. They've fallen away from the true, authentic, and genuine faith. So, that might light up a few hearers there, Kevin. Let me say another one. If you are a Christian who seeks the Lord and you are filled with the Holy Spirit, as it's written in the Scripture, if you clothe yourself with Christ and you walk into a church, the Spirit of Jesus Christ in you is not welcome in the American churches by any means whatsoever. Most people who are very pious and pure and abide in Christ, they are simply not welcome in the churches anymore. So this fellow Mark is entered into territory that I've known over the last 35 years. We met together in Albertsons, Kevin, that day. It was Easter, and I asked you, are you going to church, Kevin? And you said, yeah, and I said, I'm not. We don't go to church. My church is my family and my kids, and there we abide in the Spirit of God. We speak truth. We have the viewpoint that the Lord has because He lives inside of us in the Holy Spirit. And if we tried to go to a church, it would be an absolute disaster because of the politics, because of the, the legitimacy, let's call it that way. And, I've done a YouTube channel for 10 years plus. It's called Repent and Seek His Face. And on that, I call American Christians to repentance because of the state of the apostasy, falling away from the true faith. If they had the true faith, they never would have let gay marriage become a law, the American Christians. Gem State Patriot talks about, where are the Christians? Where are the Christians? Well, as Mark says, the demon rats, that's referring to an evil power of totalitarianism that took over the United States in Washington, D.C. Where are the Christians? Well, the problem is the churches need to repent. And that's my comment, Kevin.
Russell, thank you very much for the call. Appreciate it. Russell calling out the churches today. We'll get your feedback if you're wondering what Russell was talking about at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. There was an article in Redstate detailing that the owner of the Old State Saloon has been given the boot by his church because of his public stance concerning the LGBT community. And he goes, he went to the people in the church, according to the article, and he said, hey, man, what's the sin? And again, back to the article, they said, well, you're divisive, you're doing all these things, you're causing a ruckus, we really don't need you to do this. And he said, yeah, but what's the sin? So he didn't think it was a big deal. He and his family, they get dressed up, go to church on Sunday, and they said, you're not welcome here. Who does that? Who really does that? You can catch our coverage of that last hour on our podcast. We'll take your calls, 580-5436, 580-KIDO.
Saturday. Does this have something to do with the foreign press pools from India, Japan, and Australia? Is there a security concern with having them on the grounds of his home?
What I can say is the president wants to have a personal moment with the leaders. This is relationships that he has had with leaders of the Quad throughout, obviously, his tenure here as president. He wanted to have us continue to foster those personal relationships. He wanted to have a private moment with them, continue to grow those relationships. That's what this is about.
Yeah, the worse the cover-up gets, the more the questions continue. Good morning, Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. That was Karine Jean-Pierre, not to be confused with Jean-Claude Van Damme, of the Biden administration, being asked by CBS's Ed O'Keefe on why are the reporters not allowed to see Joe Biden interacting with the foreign leaders? Why is Joe Biden hiding from people? And by the way, let's face it, at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, not that we need Joe Biden to step down, but are we going to get that explosive dossier one day where Joe Biden and the whole Biden administration was FDR-like in the cover-up? And what do you mean by that? FDR, according to a lot of historians, was so bad at the end that it was, what was his wife, Eleanor? Esther? What was Roosevelt's wife name? Esther Roosevelt? Was it Esther Roosevelt, Sweet William? No, it's not Esther. And she laughed like that, Esther Roosevelt. Oh, Bo, what's that? You learned this from your history class? It was Eleanor Roosevelt? I swore it was Esther Roosevelt. Well, anyway, Esther Roosevelt was one of these people that just ran everything. And she was the one really running the White House. Apparently now we're hearing that Jill Biden is actually attending cabinet meetings. Well, she's the first lady. She's not elected. It'd be one thing if she was Michelle Obama. It'd be one thing if she were Hillary Clinton that still wants a job. Now, we all, whether we want to be retired or not, we all dream of being retired, right? And I don't really know if being retired is what it's cut out to be. There are many people that, it's like a social stigma. You have to be married. You have to have a house. You have to have a job. You have to have a car. You have to be retired. And really, if you can retire, great. And I want to share this for the young people because, we're the old codgers here, but we're going to market exclusively we're going to pander to the Generation Z people. And people are going to, Kevin, Generation Z, they listen to the podcast. Well, maybe they can listen to our podcast. But it used to drive me crazy. And you lose your perspective depending on your age. It used to drive me crazy where I'd go, why don't all these old people get out? And when you're an old person, you're going, hey, man, the fixes are good. I don't want to get out. It's cold out there. But why retire if you don't have to? But how desperate do you have to be if you're Hillary Clinton? What is she, in her mid-70s? She, in fact, is looking at trying to get a job with the Harris administration, says she would be open to it. In fact, you wonder why Hillary Clinton is making all these moves all of a sudden, ripping Donald Trump. Yes, she's scorned still because America rejected her. But Hillary Clinton would take a job. Now, I guess it's not like Glenn in Nampa, gun-toting Glenn, his job, or it's like the Lee Joe job where you're driving a big truck or, plumbing or working hard like Patriot Ray. But can you imagine you're so into this, you're so into the ego, you don't like being in the same bed with Bill Clinton, who really believes that, that they're having their egg souffle together? Of course not. That you want to go work for the vice president? How about go to the Oregon coast? Maybe hang out at Salt Lake. Maybe go study Kurt Cobain's impact on, the post-1980s music culture. You've got grandchildren. Why not hang out with them? Is it really that important for you to be employed? And don't we want to have, I hate to say this, the little ageism here, but don't we want some young people in there? Think about that. We've got Old Man Joe. We've got Old Man Joe, and then we're going to bring in Kamala that they call young. She's 60, 61. 60 or 61 is not young. You're not going to see them at Bodo over the weekend. You're not going to see these people dancing the night away. That's not young. And now you're going to bring back Hillary Clinton? No, we need some young people in there, don't we? Think about that for a moment. We'd love to get your thoughts. KIDO Talk Radio. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Kevin. From the Idaho Pizza Company studio, traffic is heavy and steady on the freeways. You're coming out of Canyon County into Ada County, working an accident downtown Boise at Myrtle and Capitol, right in the middle of the intersection there, and one at Karcher just west of Marketplace. Dealing with backed up drains can be costly. Perfect Plumbing, Heating, and Air will clear your drain for just $29, providing you with unbeatable home comfort without breaking the bank. Call or schedule at callperfectnow.com. That's your traffic now on KIDO.
Thank you very much, Dave Burnett. I go back to this, though, that do we really want Hillary Clinton back? You know, it's so bad that we have the Obama administration running the Biden administration, going to run the Harris administration. Why in the world at 580-5436-580-KIDO would we want to bring back Hillary Clinton? And by the way, Hillary Clinton has made so much money. Why in the world would we want to bring her back? Because again, some people age like fine wine. Some people age like the president. And it's not good to age.
Thank you all for being here. And now, who am I introducing next? Who's next?
Hey, man. Who's next? Hey, who am I introducing? Give me my notes, Timmy.
Distinguished guests, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India.
Oh, my. That's too good enough not to comment on. 580-KIDO. Don't forget our friends Clay and Buck coming up after the news. They're going to tell you what's coming up on their show today at 10. Don't forget our friends at Beacon Plumbing. They say, stop freaking. Call Beacon today, beaconplumbing.net for all your plumbing needs. Heard moments ago, but also Clay and Buck before that. And, well, our great friend Lars Larson will join us in less than 20 minutes. Phone numbers here, 580-5436-580-KIDO. Big news in the nation's heartland, the Southland, out of Birmingham, Alabama. Here's the G-Man with the latest.
Woodfin says Saturday's deadly shooting that left more than 100 shell casings at the scene was not the first such shooting this year. He did say it, to him, is the result of lax laws that enable segments of his and other communities.
Riding around with semi-automatic weapons, automatic weapons, conversion switches, and everything else, whose only intent, hell-bent intent, is to harm people, shoot people, kill people.
Police called Saturday's shooting a paid hit that killed its target and others caught in the crossfire. Federal agencies are helping local police in the investigation. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Thank you, G-Man. KIDO Talk Radio, Kevin Mill in the morning. That is in Birmingham, Alabama. We go live to Birmingham, Alabama, where a lot of people were in this dust-up, this shoot-up. Was it in a bad neighborhood, a good neighborhood? The roving reporter of the state of Alabama, John Mountz, joins us now. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Kevin.
So a busy weekend for you, sadly, in Alabama.
And it's not the first. We've had a lot of incidents. That's the thing that we're looking at is when we were getting calls from all over the country saying, oh, my gosh, I'm so sorry about this mass shooting. This isn't the first one of these. It's the first one of this magnitude. We've had 4 of these this year. And the last one prior to this one, there was a candlelight vigil being held for 3 people who were shot. And at the candlelight vigil, just 2 days later, 3 more people shot and killed. This is an epidemic happening in this city.
Yeah, Birmingham, Alabama, home of a lot of racial unrest in the past. It had really moved past this. What can you tell us about the latest shooting? Was this in a bad neighborhood?
Not at all. Well, it's not the greatest neighborhood. The south side of Birmingham is kind of an entertainment district. It has been for years. When I was in college at UAB some 25 years ago, that was where you went on Friday night to go see a show. And it's actually kind of gotten better. But even in an okay neighborhood, there are pockets of activity that are less than desirable. This happened outside of a hookah lounge, about 1 block from the 5 Points area, which is where the epicenter of the South Side. And essentially, it was a crime that could have happened anywhere. There was a beef between 2 individuals, and basically there was a hit put out, is what the police are now saying, that one of them had a hit put out on him. And the guy tracked him down there, and that's where he opened fire with a weapon. It had what they call a Glock switch on it. So he was able to unload 100 rounds in a period of about 20 seconds.
Boy, is that where they have all the good restaurants in Birmingham? I remember you and I used to work. Is that where the Frank Stitz restaurant is?
They are, yes. But you've got Chez Fonfon over there, Bottega. Yes, a lot of really good restaurants right in that area. It's a relatively, normally and very close to the hospitals as well. I guess that was kind of a good thing in this situation. But yeah, normally it's not that unsafe of an area, at least not during those hours anyway.
Yeah, no, for people listening here in Idaho on KIDO Talk Radio, they've got a and I don't want to say this in a bad way, but you've got a lot of world famous chefs there. Frank Stitt, who has this place called the Highlands Bar in Bottega, and they really pride themselves on serving, ingredients and food that get, the James Beard Awards and the Michelin stars. So you have a lot of culture in that area, and again, you've got a world-renowned hospital. So when you hear a gang shooting going on there, it's quite a shock.
It is, and the mayor quickly came out and blamed guns. And don't get me wrong, guns were used, but I don't think guns are the heart of the problem. Had it not been guns, it could have been anything. But I will say that gun was basically, with the Glock switch, became a fully automatic weapon. Definitely magnified the extent of the damage. But had it not been for that, if it was 6 shooters, it still would have been, there still would have been loss of life, I think, on Saturday night.
So what's crime like where you live?
Where I live is fine, because I don't live in the downtown area. I'm south of town, what they call over the mountain. There's kind of a big mountain that divides the city in half. So I'm in an okay area, but in the Birmingham area, crime has gotten steadily worse, specifically violent crime. And usually it's young men who they have a disagreement with one another, and
so it's usually young black men.
Yes, I was going to let you say that, but yes, that's exactly what it is.
Well, I mean, right, but I mean, again, black men, African American men, Birmingham predominantly an African American centric city. I worked there. You still work there. There's nothing provocative about saying that, but I digress.
Well, and a lot of people talk about the racial strife that Birmingham has had, like the 1963 bombing of the 63 Baptist Church. But this has nothing to do with that. This is black on black crime, and this is just one of many incidences of this. And there's a problem in the community where there's a lot of kids being brought up on the street where there's not a father in the home. The mother probably works, or maybe there's not even a mother in the home. Maybe they're being raised by their grandmother or their aunt or something like that. And this is the result of that. And you're seeing more and more of this because they look for a father figure. They don't find it, from a father, so they find it on the street.
That doesn't mean you go kill people because you don't have a daddy.
No, it doesn't justify it at all.
Yeah, but
I'm just explaining how it happens.
Well, we appreciate that, and we thank you for letting us know that you went to college 25 years ago. It's very relevant to the story here on KIDO Talk Radio. And again, you know I had to give you a smack. It's been a while. When we take a look at the reaction of law enforcement, sir, what is it?
So law enforcement says, of course, the usual things that there's no suspects, there's no leads. Crime Stoppers, call them, give us the information. My prediction, there won't be any resolution. Now, they did escalate this. They called in the FBI. So maybe the FBI can do what Scott Thurman, the chief of police, can't do in Birmingham, and maybe they'll be able to, get some sort of. But I guarantee this is not going. They'll get the guy who did this, probably, maybe, but it won't solve it because there's another person right behind that one who will shoot up somewhere else. This isn't over. This is just the latest escalation. This probably somebody else is now mad about this, and then there'll be a shooting, in another week of whoever was involved in this shoot.
It sounds like Biggie and Tupac and Diddy.
It really is, yes. It's just like that. Only it's usually over turf. It's usually over, who stole. Sometimes it's as petty as somebody literally disrespected somebody else's shoes. That was a couple shootings ago. That was what it was. Somebody disrespected somebody's shoes.
You're really saying that this happens all the time?
A lot. I can't say all the time, but very regularly. Probably at least once a week.
Once a week.
Sometimes a couple times in a week.
What is the reaction of former Mayor Bernard Kincaid to this?
Honestly, we've not heard from Mayor Kincaid. Our current mayor he's, like I said, blaming the guns. But we have not heard from the previous mayor.
Now, again, you cover the news and occasionally you do a talk show. Before we get to local reaction, let me ask you to put on your political hat on KIDO Talk Radio. Our friend John Mountz joining us from Birmingham, the latest of this tragic apparent gang shooting where some people were killed, over 100 rounds found on the ground. But could you see this situation being used as perhaps somebody, a high-profile person, maybe the vice president coming to visit Birmingham to speak about the ills of gun violence? Could you see that happening, or somebody else from the administration?
Yes, I absolutely could see that happening. If this continues to grow in terms of the national, it was really interesting how we found out about this. Like, it was a national story before it was super big locally. This is like a traffic accident. It happens so frequently, and another 4 people shot on the south side, and then we just kind of roll our eyes and say, yep, not safe. but it became a national story. I guess it was a slow news weekend, and I heard it on the Fox newscast before I heard it on our own, because we were just, it really is a big story.
You were scooped by the national media on your own story?
We did, yes. I mean, I knew of it, but it was one of those things, well, it's just another situation. But because I think they looked at it kind of the holistic way that a lot of, like a school shooting or something like that, like it was a surprise. But it's not a surprise to us. And I think that if it continues to grow, yes, I could see a situation where they weaponize this thing to be an issue for the election, because they'll say that Donald Trump is not strong on gun violence, and Kamala wants to take the guns off the streets, which is what our mayor is calling for. Although he said his call is not political, but then he said a bunch of political things right after that.
Again, 4 people dead, 18 others injured. You're talking about 100 rounds on the street. Here's what your police chief, Scott Thurman, had to say on KIDO Talk Radio via Fox News Radio.
We believe that there was a hit, if you will, on that particular person, as far as, someone was willing to pay money to have that person killed.
And your new mayor, not the former mayor, the good mayor, Bernard Kincaid. This is Randall Woodfin.
We should not allow people to just ride around with any style type of weapon that doesn't even belong on domestic streets. It should not be allowable, period.
Do you guys like guns there or what?
Well, yes, we do like guns, but we like them used responsibly, and this clearly was not that.
Well, it's a very conflicting nature that you have, because you have a lot of folks that, love the guns, and then you have a lot of people that love the guns and do it illegally. We'll be interested to see whether or not there's a crackdown. What about the state of Alabama? What are they saying about this?
The state has, the governor has offered any sort of support that she can provide, as well as ALEA, or the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, has also offered the same. But the mayor actually went around all of that, went straight to the FBI with this. So I guess he's not interested in what the state has to offer, and he wanted to go to the feds.
What about Larry Langford? What would he say about this?
Well, God rest his soul. I'm sure Larry Langford would say, we have to do something about this situation, this epidemic of violence. But again, he probably wouldn't want to cast stones or point the finger at the real problem, because it's not the weapon. The weapon is just the end. It's not the original cause.
Again, final couple thoughts with John Mountz here on KIDO Talk Radio, live from Birmingham, Alabama. You go back to, you don't have to be from Alabama to understand the history of that area, where you had, you literally have statues of the dogs chewing up the black people fighting for their civil liberties. And then to see this black on black crime is heartbreaking when we think about what would Fred Shuttlesworth think, Reverend Woods would think, all the people that you've known for years, that I've known for years. And truly a sad state of affairs. Finally, do you and the people in that area feel safe in your cars driving around, or you guys just don't go out at night, or you don't go out to the good part of town anymore?
We know the parts of town you're not supposed to go to, but I will tell you, Southside was considered a safe area. It was not, not the safest, but it was considered a place where I didn't have to, there are parts of town you just plain don't go, even in the daytime. Southside was not one of those. So that is kind of a new development.
So is it like Iraq, where you have a green zone and a non-green zone there?
In a way, but then again, we've seen this crime follow us into Hoover, which is an over-the-mountain area, a part that's not downtown, and we've seen things happen in Hoover and collateral damage. Unfortunately, these gangsters, they don't really practice, they don't go to the range and carefully work on their shooting skills, so when they fire indiscriminately. They might get their man, but they get a whole bunch of other people around them a lot of times, and that's why this has become such a problem, is because, like in the case of the shooting that happened in the mall a few years ago, yes, one person one bad guy was shot, but also a good guy, a kid was shot. And this happens all the time, where somebody is mad, they're shooting a gun, and they're not paying attention to where the bullets are going. And then what happens is the police come in the case of that one, the police came in and shot the shooter. And, of course, who gets the blame? The police.
Wow. You live in a very challenging part of the world.
It can be, yes.
Hold on for a minute. Do you have a minute?
I kind of have to go, but I've got a few more minutes.
No, if you have to go, we were going to take a couple calls, but we'll take them without you.
Okay. Thank you, Kevin.
No, I understand you're busy, and we appreciate you making time. And as I said, always a big fan, so thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Have a great rest of your show.
Our great friend John Mountz will get your reaction next. Another mass shooting 4 people dead. Is it time to take the guns? Kevin Miller. Brian, good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Brian.
Hey, Kevin, let's call me the elite clicker, and that's spelled C-L-I-C-K-E-R, Leroy. Oh, did I say your name wrong?
Leroy. Hold on. Can I say it? Leroy. That's such a name we don't use a lot. Leroy.
And may I just point out, Kevin, that I agree that all your callers are elite. And I also agree that Idaho is elite. And a lot of the people here are elite. And I think your last story proves that. Kevin, who runs the city that shooting came in on? Is it a Democrat or a Republican?
It is a Democrat.
Wow. Am I surprised? Hey, Kevin, do you think I'd be surprised if after they catch this guy and they gave me his name, that if I ran his record, that he didn't have prior criminal offenses on his record?
Which one? The gangbanger?
Yeah, the gangbanger or the shooter. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You think they have?
I'm sure they have priors, yeah.
You know what the Democratic Party is known for since Joe Biden's been in office? And, Kamala? Letting a lot of criminals out of jail. So they create the problem by not holding people accountable. And then they scream gun violence. Hey, Kevin, you know one of the reasons I like the title Elite Clicker is because I have a genetic flaw that makes my hand shake. And the reason I don't need a machine gun is because I can shoot a semi-automatic weapon pretty dang close to a fully automatic weapon. Now, it's not as accurate, and it sprays all over. That's why I don't do it a lot. I use a semi-automatic weapon because I can be more precise with it. Kind of like an AR-15. I can hit my exact target. Kind of like I said, how did this assassin that tried to get in range of Trump, why is he not dead? Who's not being elite with their weapons? Well, I guess this is what happens when we don't hold people accountable. Hey, Kevin, there was a guy that came here to Idaho from out of state. Funny. I kind of... I like certain out-of-staters, other ones I don't, and killed 4 college students.
Oh, yeah. Now he's in Boise. He might be, that Kohlberger, he might be listening to us right now. We're number 1 in the jail and the prison.
Yeah, so my message for Kohlberger is this. Hey, Governor, if you want to deputize me, I'll be the hangman. And then you can demote me afterwards. Did you hear that, Kohlberger? That's what Idahoans think of people that come here and do what you did with a knife. And you're lucky that you did it to people that don't believe in guns. Because, Kohlberger, if you would have come into my house, I guarantee you it would be a different story. And the Democrats would take that and say, oh, look, the elite clicker is a killer. He's a nasty guy. No, I'm just defending my own.
He'd be a dead Kohlberger.
He'd be Kohlberger burger. Let's just call it that. So, Leroy, my religion teaches me that God doesn't value one flesh over another. And he thinks that I think Idahoans are elite. I do. I think we're more religious. But I also believe that the executive office of any state, not just Idaho. I wouldn't go to Nevada. I wouldn't go to Michigan. I wouldn't go to Texas. I wouldn't go any other state and try to be the governor because I don't know the culture as well as I know the culture of Idaho. And it's that simple. And I kind of have this feeling that if you can't win in the state where you were raised, where the people know you the best, it's kind of arrogant to go somewhere else and think you're going to win there. Now, I know it happens, but I just believe, like the executive, the President of the United States, you have to be a member of the United States. I personally believe that if you're going to be a governor of a state, you should be born and raised in that state. If that makes me the elite clicker, well, you can call me whatever you want. It's just my belief. And he's offended by that because, somebody came to Idaho, made a big deal, tried to run for governor, And I like the guy. I don't got a problem with him. But he lost. Maybe he should have listened to the elite, D-L-I-C-K-E-R.
Who are you talking about that came together and lost?
Bundy.
Oh, Bundy, yeah. Bundy's on the run.
I don't really have a problem with the guy. I agreed with, I would say, 95% of what he said. That's what's crazy. But I know something because I have multiple generations that lived in Idaho. That doesn't make me better than the people in Africa. It doesn't make me better than the people in China. It's just I know the culture, and we know that politics follows culture. I'm sorry if that knowledge, and that's what it is, offends you. I don't agree with a lot of your callers. Like pro-life called in and said, God can't fix man's nuclear mess. I'm sorry. I don't agree with you on that one, pro-life. It doesn't mean I don't like pro-life.
No,
I love pro-life.
And we love you, Brian. We've got to run. Let's get you to traffic. Kevin Mill in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Kevin. From the Idaho Pizza Company studio, traffic now working a new accident at McMillan and Meridian. Watch for that. And that accident at Capitol and Myrtle, still working that, and that really has the traffic on the connector backed up. You may want to find an alternate route into downtown Boise. Enter the Idaho Lottery's Name That Scratch Game contest, and you could win $3,000 in scratch tickets and a chance to help design the game. Enter today at NameThatScratchGame.com. That's your traffic now on KIDO.
Appreciate that, Dave Burnett. Always trying to make your Monday the best. Is Monday not the worst day of the week? Not my Monday. It's my Friday, Kevin. Well, good for you. The rest of us, we're kind of like John Fetterman trying to answer a question. Hey, Mr. Fetterman, what about the fracking flip-flop of Harris?
Of Americans would agree with that.
All right, well, let me talk about a big issue, another big issue, I should say, in your state, the issue of fracking. I know you've talked about this quite a bit. Vice President Harris, as you know, once supported a ban on fracking when she was running for president in 2020. She even sued the Obama administration to prevent fracking off California's coast. Now she says she will not ban the practice as president. Why should voters trust
stories for you and your loved ones and everybody else to keep informed about what's happening in and outside the state of Idaho? Let's go to the Yap Yap Club. General churches are all weak, from the Pope to the pews full of the woke. It's all pretty much a broke message of embracing evil in the name of Christ. Wow, people are hard on the churches today. I stopped going to church decades ago because that was made so obvious to me. I just read the good book daily and put my trust and faith in God because I lost faith in humanity in my youth, witnessing the totalitarianism that was coming now today, Denver and Nampa. This is in reaction to our story concerning the owner of the Old State Saloon, where, in fact, apparently Mark told Redstate.com, that he was given the boot from his church because of his proclamations concerning the LGBT and everybody else. It is disturbing when we're talking about what's going on in churches, but do we condemn our churches? I don't know. By the way, before we get to the big man, Lars Larson, let's cue him up for this one.
I want to thank you all for being here. And now, who am I introducing next? Who's next?
Lars? Lars?
Distinguished guests, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India.
Man, that is amazing. Lars Larson joins us now. Catch him today at 4. Who am I introducing next?
Isn't that, I mean, this guy is gone, and the fact that he turned over a cabinet meeting of the United States government, the most powerful government on earth, and he said, yeah, Jill's going to finish out the meeting. Is this the way things work in the Democrats' world, where when they're willing to take him out of the race for re-election, but they are unwilling to remove him with the 25th Amendment, and they decide, we'll just leave him there as a placeholder, and maybe Kamala will win. Although I guess as of today, a number of Democrats are expressing the fear, and I think it's a well-founded fear, that when the pollsters run the polls, that they are undercounting Trump's support. And that's coming from the left side of the aisle. They're concerned that the polling numbers are false, but not in a good way. They're leading the Democrats to believe they're winning when they're not.
Well, and that is, and you know, Lars, that is something troubling that they've never been able to count the Trump voters. But, you know, we're getting nonstop Kamala ads everywhere.
Well, think about this. I mean, you and I watch politics all the time. But for the average person, they, in many cases, people, especially here in the Northwest, are going to be in an environment where admitting that you're a Trump supporter could be toxic to your daily life, you know, your work life, your family life. So you just decide, I'm going to vote for him, but I'm not going to tell anybody I'm voting for him. And I'm going to, because they don't have to. It's their right as an American to cast a secret ballot, even secret from your closest family members. Well, if that's the position they're in, are they going to poll honestly? Not that they're being dishonest. They have a right to keep their choice to themselves. So when the pollster calls and maybe family members are sitting right there while you're answering the poll questions, usually it's a phone poll, are you going to tell the pollster the truth or say, oh, no, I'm voting for Kamala Harris and that Tim Walz, or the Great Walls of China, as we call him, because he has such an affection for the communist country. And if those numbers are coming in false, it's like having a bad speedometer in your car that shows Kevin Miller he's going 40 miles an hour when he's actually going 80. And he says, but officer, the speedometer said I was going 40. Well, you were actually going 80. Sorry.
Well,
you know,
we would blame
bad data.
We would blame the speedometer for that because we don't have any personal responsibility. And, you know, it's funny, Lars. And by the way, I want to, if you don't mind, I want to share a story with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
so years ago when we would go to D.C., long before Lars Larson was on this program, you and I and Rusty Humphreys went out to dinner, and you guys felt sorry for me because you were walking. I'm going, dude, Kevin, do you need a cab? Yes, I need a cab, Lars. And
it was a long walk, admit it. It was a long, and it was in a nice Italian restaurant on the edge of Georgetown. Yeah. Not that we know D.C. that well, but we had said, hey, where's a great place to eat? Yeah, and I just always remember that night of talking to you and Rusty Humphreys and all, and the conversation that was going on, and it seems to be in America today that doesn't seem to be happening between the left and the right. And then how we ended the night, we went to the wall and Rusty showed us his dad, and just that whole belief that your listeners and our listeners believe in, and yet the media just seems to be, producing the counter narrative to that. Yeah, they are. And here's the thing. Where that becomes toxic to Americans, journalism is supposed to serve the public. And in many cases, it doesn't. If you disserve the public by telling them nobody supports Trump, he's going to lose, when in fact you know otherwise, if you make him so toxic by telling and repeating the nonsense that comes out of the mouths of politicians, now I realize that in journalism, I think it was Ben Bradley at the Washington Post used to say, we don't publish the truth, we publish what people say. And you say, well, isn't that the truth? Not necessarily. A good journalist would go to the mayor of Boise and say, hey, what's going on here? And the mayor would say, well, this is what's going on. It's all perfectly fine. But then the good journalist would find somebody who says, no, the mayor is not telling you the truth. It's not fine, and here's why. And then you present both sides to the public. If you're just a no-opinion reporter, and that's what I was for 20 years, I kept my own opinion out. But I could seek out other people's opinions and say, everybody's saying this is a good thing for the town. Let me see if there are any legitimate critics who have legitimate reasons why this is a bad thing for Boise. And then you would just present both of them. But the media is not presenting both sides. Right now, the legacy media is telling you, we will fact-check the daylights out of Trump. Everything that comes out of his mouth, the president, without any factual support, says X, President Trump. And then Kamala Harris will say crazy things where you could easily find a counter-narrative where she'll be asked about inflation, which is a major issue for everyday Americans, and she has no answer whatsoever. And do they then say, well, it's kind of my job. If she's being asked about what she's going to do to fix inflation, And there's even a reasonable argument that a lot of the things she and Joe Biden have done in the last 3.5 years have caused the inflation that is emptying the pockets and the bank accounts and filling up the credit cards of average Americans who are just trying to stay even with, not even get ahead at this point. The last 3.5 years have been a march backwards, because if and some of the numbers that I've seen, groceries, they're said to have gone up an average of 22%. Averages are very deceptive. A gentleman sent me a list. He'd actually kept a Walmart receipt for his, 2 weeks grocery shopping from 4 years ago, and then went out and bought the very same things today, and it cost him 40% more. Well, groceries aren't your whole budget, but if your grocery bill has gone up 40%, and your paycheck has even gone up 15 or 18%, you're behind. And so she's asked about this problem. It's a legitimate thing to ask about. And she just blathers on about how she grew up in a middle-class household. Can I share something? Did we talk about her middle-class household last week? Because I can't recall if we did, but this is one of my favorite finds of the week.
No, please go ahead.
Okay, here's what I did. I kept seeing Kamala Harris say over and over again, she starts into this long song and dance about, I grew up in a middle-class household. Well, I went and looked up the actual data. Mom and Dad was a college professor. Mom was a clinical researcher who was apparently of some note in cancer. So I couldn't find Mom's paycheck, but it was probably decent. I mean, if you're a clinical researcher on cancer, it's not a bad job, and they don't pay you minimum wage. What I could find was her dad's paycheck. Her dad, as a Stanford University professor, made $20,000 a year. Now, today that sounds like what you pay the kid who's working part-time at the Burger Shack. But back then, I went and then looked up what was the median income in America. It was $9,700. So her dad alone made double the median income in America. And Mom made something, I would guess, probably similar. And that would mean if Mom made the same paycheck as Dad, again, I'm having to guess because I couldn't find any documents that showed where she had mentioned how much her mom made. But let's say Mom and Dad both made $20,000 each. That's $40,000. That means she was living in a household of two university professors whose household income was 4 times the median household in America. Do you think that qualifies as middle class?
No.
I mean, unless you're really generous with middle class. Say, middle class goes from the middle median all the way up to 400% of median. And so she's lying. Now, have you seen a single reporter do that story?
Not at all.
No. And yet, will they bang on Trump all day long and twice on Sunday? They're still arguing about how much money did his dad leave him. And that's another one where I don't think reporters should be intensely curious. And I think and skeptical. Those two things I think are essential to be a reporter. Number one, you should be curious about just about everything. Now, you may narrow down and say, I'm a sports reporter, so I'm intensely curious about everything involving sports. And you should be skeptical when somebody tells you something and you say, I want to check and see if that holds up against the facts. Nothing wrong with being curious and skeptical. They are incredibly curious about Donald Trump's beginnings, and they are incredibly uninterested in inquiring into anything that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have to say. And so if you were to say, well, Donald Trump, his dad left him $50 million in cash and real estate. Great. Kevin, I think you and I have talked before about where would most people be if at, say, 18 or 21, they inherited $50 million worth of real estate and cash. Where would they be in 10 years?
Doing quite well, I would believe.
Not necessarily. Have you ever met any people who've inherited large amounts of money and then later on they don't have large amounts of money anymore?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, plenty. And lottery winners are infamous for that. Very few lottery winners who get a lot of money hang on to it. It goes. And I've seen businesses that were started by Grandpa, built to its current size by the son of Grandpa, and then the kids go out and spend all the money and run the business into the ground. I'm always pleased when I see a third or fourth generation business where the kids have actually managed to build on it. Oftentimes they don't, because they grow up in a household as rich kids, and then they inherit a lot of money, and they blow it. How many times do you think you've ever heard of anybody who inherited $50 million? And even if they hung on to it, just lived off the earnings of it, which would be about 50 times 4, about $2 million a year. In other words, you could spend $2 million a year forever, and the $50 million would just sit in investments, and you just live on $2 million a year, which I think most of us could get by on $2 million a year very nicely. I wish I had $2 million a year, but I don't, by the way. But
not what. Hold on, that's not what I heard.
Well, you know what? Kevin, I always say, I wish I made the paycheck everybody thinks I make.
Well,
and so in any case, all I'm saying is, how many people do you know who inherit $50 million and then grow it into $5 or $6 billion?
Yeah, not many.
It usually doesn't happen. Oftentimes, the people who are billionaires today, and think about the familiar names who are billionaires today, are billionaires because they went out and they innovated and they built and they built, and they didn't stop. I mean, there are plenty of tech billionaires who could have, say, got to the point where they were making $2, $3, $5 million a year and said, that's good enough, I'm comfortable, and kicked back. In fact, there is one guy who wrote the original DOS, the disk operating system, the one that Gates walked in and bought from him. He liked flying his plane. He liked having a good time, and he was making enough money. So when Gates came to him, and early on in Microsoft, I don't like Bill Gates very well for a lot of other reasons, but he went to the guy and said, hey, I'll buy it from you. And the guy said, okay, fine, because he wasn't that interested in building it to something bigger. And Gates then took what he had purchased and built it up. There are people who've taken over mom or dad's business that's a tiny little business and built it to gigantic businesses, but it's because they go out and take risks. They're willing to accept the risks. And then the familiar rap on Trump, which the media does nothing to disabuse them of, is say, but he's never gone bankrupt personally, but his companies have gone bankrupt. You say, great. I looked up the other day the famous rich people who've gone bankrupt. It's a ton of names that you know. P.T. Barnum had gone bankrupt. There's just a long list of very successful people whose businesses have gone bankrupt. And then and Apple very nearly went over the edge. They were near to bankruptcy when they kicked Steve Jobs out. I don't like the late Steve Jobs. I don't like him either.
You remember when Apple was $4? I remember when Apple stock was $4 a share. And people said, why didn't people buy a lot? And they said, because it looked like a failing tech company, and it was. It came very close to bankruptcy, and finally the board of directors said, let's bring Jobs back. And for all his other personal deficits, he wasn't very nice to the people around him. He was brilliant at the business, and he manages to turn into one of the wealthiest countries on earth that has, what do they have, $400 or $500 billion in cash that they're sitting on. That they're certainly not worried about paying the bills or their ability to buy other companies. But the point is, do they do that with Trump? No. Now, what has Kamala Harris achieved in her life? Well, we'll just let it go with that. I got to jump into a couple other things, though. I know you're on a roll, but a lot of people want to know what Lars Larson on KIDO Talk Radio has to think about a debate. We have the vice president trying to taunt the president to do another one. What do you think? I mean, you've been one-on-one. You've been in the same room with Donald Trump. You've interviewed him on the air. So what do you think?
I think that he got everything he could have hoped to get out of the last one. I think she had no answers, and I think the media so clearly sided with Kamala Harris. Fact-checked Trump falsely a number of times. Didn't fact-check Kamala Harris once. So when, I guess let's use a sports analogy. You like sports. I mean, I like sports too, but I'm just not, fanatic about any one. But I enjoy going to a ball game. But if you know that you're going to play a ball game and you know already the refs are fixed, would you agree to another ball game under those conditions?
No, not at all.
I mean, because you could say, well, we're so good that even with bad calls, we'll end up, we'll win or at least do well. I guess the point is, this is why referees get so much, criticism, and when they do their job well and fairly, everybody applauds them. And when they make one bad call that gives the win to the losing team, that they get bashed up one side and down the other. Why? Because you want fair referees. And in this case, you have the people who are effectively the referees, the people who ask the questions, and they ask tough questions of Trump and actually openly critical questions of Trump. How do you explain why you're doing this? And then they turn to Kamala Harris and throw her a softball. And when she comes out with either no answer at all, which should be followed up on, they don't. And the best one was the one I just mentioned, the one she keeps getting asked. Are people better off today than they were 4 years ago? It was a great question. She didn't at all. There are times politicians will kind of brush up against an answer. They may get a little bit of an answer, but they really don't answer the question. She dodged it 100%. I watched it live that night. I was thinking, is she going to answer this? And she just went into I grew up a poor child, in my middle-class household with my mom and dad could only make 4 times the median income. And wouldn't that bother think about the media saying, we're going to demand Trump's tax returns, we're going to demand to know how much money was he left, we're going to say he must have made that money illicitly, we're going to suggest all that. And she says, I grew up in this middle-class household. Mommy and Daddy only made 400% of the median income in the United States of America at the time. So why go back into another contest like that? So she can get an edge? I think the guy I like to cite lately, he's a full-on liberal, but he used to work for the New York Times, Nate Silver. But I do think he's an honest pollster, and he understands that pollsters depend on their reputation. You either have a reputation for getting it right or you don't. And there isn't a lot of in between. Silver left the New York Times, formed the company 538. 538 is a reference to the Electoral College votes because there are 538 Electoral College votes, one for every senator, one for every House rep, and I think the other 3 are Puerto Rico, American Samoa, and Guam. I think that's the list. So it's 538 votes. You need 270 to win. Right now, Nate Silver has Trump beating Kamala Harris by 50 Electoral College votes. He has to get 270. Silver says right now he looks to be getting closer to 320, and Harris is below 250. She's a country mile away from winning. Donald Trump is leading her tremendously. But you see, when you've already got a media that doesn't want to admit that he was a great president, and they do want to carry water for Kamala Harris and suggest that somehow she's, you should take her seriously, even though nothing she gives in the way of answers would cause you to take her seriously. And Tim Walz, worse. I mean, he ran the state of Minnesota into the ground hard and had all these scandals, his lunch, school lunch scandal that cost the taxpayers $250 million, his big scandal involving a lot of the pandemic money. And they are just like, we're not curious about that at all. A guy who's gone to China 30 times in the last 3 decades, got married to his American wife in China for whatever reason you do that, went on his honeymoon in China, has sponsored hundreds and hundreds of school kids to travel to communist China. And you wonder, why is this guy so fascinated with communist China? And the media is incredibly incurious. They don't care.
Well,
they don't see a problem.
And finally, about a minute left, your prediction on the big debate between Minnesota Waltz, as we call him, and J.D. Vance.
I think Vance is going to mop the floor with him. I really do think that, because I think Walz is going to start waving his arms around, and I think if J.D. Vance, even if the moderators don't ask the questions, I think Trump could have done a little better if he had done more of this. He did some of this where they don't ask her the question, some question that is critical. And I think what Trump should have done after they asked her about the inflation question, or are people better off than they were before, and she just completely dodged the question. Trump, when they came to him for the next question, should have turned and said, first, I'm going to give you an answer to your question, but now you ask Vice President Harris if people are better off today. She knows they are not. She would not tell you they are better off because she knew she couldn't get away with that lie. So I'm going to ask her, are you willing to say today to America that people are better off today? Look at the camera and tell all those Americans out there, you are better off today than you were 4 years ago. And if you won't do it, then the public knows you are lying by omission. If he had done that and done more of that, if J.D. Vance, and I don't know what his techniques are or what he's going to do, but I think there are going to be some great opportunities. Why the fascination with China? China is openly antagonistic toward the United States. China wants to replace the United States on the globe, and Joe Biden has turned over the ballgame to them. He has said, we will not use our own energy. We will buy all of our energy-producing devices from his buddies in China because his family got bought off.
And Lars, that'll have to be the the last point. I know you're rolling.
I totally understand. Sorry about that, Kevin.
You're
going to have to get a muzzle for me. Give me one of those Hannibal Lecter muzzles.
What is it, 6 hours of content you do a day?
Hey, I'll keep on going.
My man.
You are the best, Kevin. Take care.
Thank you, Lars. Our great friend Lars Larson. Catch him today at 4 on KIDO Talk Radio. Great conversation. 580 KIDO. I do appreciate Lars Larson right after Sean Hannity at 4 o'clock here on KIDO Talk Radio. Just breaking down by the numbers the vice president's non-middle class family upbringing.
It's as if you recited some of those facts before. But
you've written
serious.
About them.
Yes,
before.
I've written about them many times.
You know, this audience may not all have heard those facts before.
That's true. Also,
I want to point out that Kamala Harris grew up in a middle class family also.
Thank you.
Do you recognize that voice, true believers? That was a forum put on by the political publication Axios with Al Gore. Al Gore, one of the more sarcastic young people around, or not so young. Remember, thank you, Al Gore. Al Gore created the internet, and that is really nothing, and I mean nothing to laugh about.
I want to point out that Kamala Harris grew up in a middle class family also.
Thank you.
Boy, that's a great middle-class family. The bottom line here is, look, the media is not going to do its job. They're not going to tell us the way things are. Despite all the money, despite Hillary Clinton, Willie, Billy, and Frilly, and everybody else, people just aren't buying her. The key question will be whether or not the American public will vote for someone they know nothing about. By the way, coming up next, a liberal Western governor defends Venezuelan gangs taking over one of the cities in his states. He's saying, don't believe your lying eyes. Another reason to thank the Lord that we live in Idaho. Kevin Miller in the morning, brought to you by Beacon Plumbing, beaconplumbing.net. Stop freaking, call Beacon today.
Good morning, Kevin. From the Idaho Pizza Company studio, earlier accident downtown Boise on Myrtle Street. That is cleared up. Traffic still slow getting into downtown Boise. That left lane's going to back up, so if you're in that slowdown, move to the right-hand lane. Otherwise, we're in pretty good shape around the valley. Dealing with backed up drains can be costly. Perfect Plumbing, Heating, and Air. They'll clear your drain for $29, providing you with unbeatable home comfort without breaking the bank. Call or schedule at callperfectnow.com. That's your traffic now. I'm Dave Burnett on KIDO Talk.
KIDO. You know, we've been covering this story throughout the morning of the Trump assassination attempt. And the suspect charged with trying to assassinate President Trump, he's going to appear in court today. And all of a sudden, apparently, there was this message that he sent with ammo, and he was going to give somebody $150,000 if he did not complete the mission. Now, this guy doesn't have a penny to his name, and where is he getting all of these the money, the resources to travel, to live the life of a nomad, a vagabond, if you will, a very dangerous vagabond at that.
Surrounding the day of the attempted assassination, while police searched Ruth's car, they found 2 additional license plates, 6 cell phones. One of the cell phones had a Google search of how to travel from Palm Beach County to Mexico. The agents also found 12 pairs of gloves and documents, including a handwritten list of dates through October of this year, 2024, and venues of where the former president would be. Additional due details come from a witness interview interviewed by the FBI, who said Ruth had dropped off a box at his house a couple months ago with ammunition, miscellaneous building materials, 4 cell phones, and various letters.
Okay, so not to get too conspiracy theorist here. At 580-5436-580-KIDO, let's do some real investigative work this morning. How many of you have more than one cell phone? You ever go to a meeting and sometimes you'll be there? And remember our friend Phil Hardy? If you don't know Phil Hardy, great guy, wonderful gentleman, involved in politics. Before that, he was a big guy in the music industry. Anyway, Phil Hardy, I remember having meetings with him, and he would be working for various government groups, or when he was working for Congressman Labrador, at the time Congressman Labrador, now the Attorney General, and he'd have like 2 or 3 phones. Can you imagine what it would be like to have more than one phone? And maybe you do. Okay, 1 phone is enough. 2 phones, you're getting there. 3 phones? So here's a guy with no job. Here's a guy that lived in Hawaii, was from North Carolina, and he had 6 phones, 2 license plates, 4 phones, endless ammunition, was going to pay somebody $150,000 if he did not do it. He knew where the president would be. Now again, maybe because you have a life, maybe because you love America, maybe because we all have simple goals like getting to work safely on time and home on time. Maybe we just want to have a great meal with our family and provide and love our great country, worship our God, and, give everybody a big conservative hug. Now, I have to tell you, I'm trying to think of something that would really get my attention that much that I'd be willing to devote so much bandwidth to it. And then I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, maybe if I read a good book, or, and I know, Bo, not to out you here, but maybe if it was a replay of Game of Thrones. But, I mean, you've read the books, you've seen the miniseries, you've seen the shorts. There isn't much to do, but the idea of doing that, Bo, thank you very much. You can go back to doing your diligent work. Sweet William, what about you? You're a House of Dragons. Well, of course you would be a House of Dragons guy. What a horrible series. However, think about this. And Sweet William, can we pull the report up again? Oh, what? You're pouting because I bullied you? Well, I apologize now for bullying you. Thank you. Can you play the clip again one more time? Let's break this up.
Surrounding the day of the attempted assassination, while police searched Ruth's car, they found 2 additional license plates, 6 cell phones. One of the cell phones had a Google search of how to travel from Palm Beach County to Mexico. Well,
traveling to Mexico would not help this guy. But apparently, think about this Ruth guy. And no, not the candy bar, Babe Ruth. Ruthie Ruth, this mentally deranged lunatic with, again, apologies to people that have severe mental illness. This guy, so to put this all in perspective, the older we get, the better we were. So apparently this ne'er-do-well, who has a family, decided that he was going to go to Ukraine, but he didn't fight in Ukraine, but he was a gadfly that the media got a hold of him. And then he talked about how horrible it was, what was going on in Ukraine. Well, who started the Ukraine war? It was Putin under the Biden administration. Scoreboard. There were no wars going on with Donald Trump. He was getting us out of Afghanistan. And we have Americans that are under fire in Syria right now and across the world that our administration refuses to acknowledge. At 580-5436. So this guy goes to Ukraine, which, what is it, $3, $4, $5 to get to Ukraine? Then you've got to live in Ukraine. The guy doesn't have a job. He comes back. Maybe he goes back to Hawaii. Maybe this guy is a diligent guy that I think he was a roofer. So maybe all he does all day is sleep in a 1-room house, rents a room, and when he's not building a roof or doing something else, he's buying cell phones with cell plans, getting license plates, finding out where the president is. Does this guy, and again, I don't really want to buy into the conspiracy theory, but does this not seem like he could do that on his own?
The agents also found 12 pairs of gloves and documents, including a handwritten list of dates through October of this year, 2024, and venues of where the former president would be. Additional new details come from a witness interviewed by the FBI who said Ruth had dropped off a box at his house a couple months ago with ammunition.
Well, maybe somebody should have opened that box up. Ammunition and $150,000 in case he failed. Who's behind this? And we rarely ever ask you questions, but at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, after hearing this information and other information, do we really believe that this guy acted alone? Can anybody really believe that this guy acted alone in his diminished state, that he put this all together? I don't know if I could buy 6 cell phones ever and then keep track of them or anything else. Could you? Coming up, we'll get back to this governor that says, hey, Venezuelan gangs are nice people. Yes, he did say that. Kevin Miller at KIDO Talk Radio. KIDO. So here we have the governor of Colorado, who's been put on the hot seat because local news, great local news coming out of Denver and Boulder and Aurora, have highlighted that Venezuelan gangs are actually taking over buildings with guns, and no one's doing anything about it. Are they here legally? Are they legal criminals? No, they're not legal criminals. Isn't that swell? Governor, what are you going to do about it? Governor, should you bring in the National Guard? Governor, should you send in the Delta Force, the Navy SEALs? Governor, tell us about those poor people in Aurora, Colorado.
That's been getting a lot of attention from the Trump team in particular because of members of a Venezuelan prison gang who migrated here to the U.S. and apparently were involved in a shooting in Aurora. During the debate, Donald Trump used Aurora as an example of the worst of the migrant crisis. This is what he said yesterday.
Under border czar Harris, Venezuelan gangs have taken over entire apartment buildings in Aurora, Colorado. The governor is petrified in Colorado. He's a liberal governor. He doesn't know what to do. The guy is so scared of these guys, and maybe you can't blame him.
Can't blame
Governor,
him.
I know local officials set up a special task force, but how do you respond to this personal attack here?
Well, I went shopping in Aurora yesterday. What a lot of Americans need to know is Aurora is over 400,000 people. It's Colorado's third largest city. Violent crime is down 2 years in a row.
There's video of people with machine guns entering buildings. The property management team says they can't collect the rents. The video says it all. And Governor Goof of Colorado is saying that he went shopping. Well, maybe the governor should go to that apartment complex and negotiate with the Venezuelan gang that's going on. It's as if they don't care. And whatever happened to doing the right thing? In big blue cities, that's why so many people are coming to Idaho. They don't care. You can have 100 rounds of ammunition being fired. You can have gangs take over buildings that don't speak English, and they don't care.
Car thefts are down 2 years in a row. It's a wonderful city. I'm there all the time. It's really a great, diverse city, and it's growing fast. It'll probably be the number 1 or number 2 city in Colorado over the next decade or two. So it's a great city. It's safer than it's been. And look, it's like any city, Chicago, L.A., mid-sized cities, Denver. Of course, there's been an issue with gangs for decades in Aurora, and I feel that we finally turned the corner. I mean, this is the difference between an elected.
We've turned the corner where you're not going to answer the question. By the way, Aurora, Colorado, I lived there as a kid for a year. It's a suburb of Denver. So as Denver grows, so is Aurora, but it's not going to grow if you have Venezuelan gangs there. You have legal weed there. You have the lawlessness is going on, and this guy with his red tie that's crooked on CBS's Face the Nation is looking at us and saying these are not the droids we're looking for? At 580-5436-580-KIDO. Now, you do what you want in Venezuela or Aurora or whatever, but don't bring that garbage to Idaho, and there's a lot of fear going on. Look, how does this break down locally? I don't know what the heck is going on in Caldwell. I really don't. Where they said they couldn't do the homecoming parade because of security concerns. Now, I understand that we live in a cut and paste society. Gosh knows we all do that when we're talking about local journalism. And the reason why I'm so tough on local journalism, just like local law enforcement that does an incredible job, is that local journalism should be attacking this issue. Now, instead, they'll go after the Idaho Freedom Foundation. Instead, they'll go after the pro-life community. But here you have, the third or fourth largest city in Idaho? Let's see, fifth maybe? Fifth largest city in Idaho, their high school there that, by the way, we went to Caldwell High School and they booted us. I don't know if the principal's still there at the time, but they didn't like it when we interviewed kids, and the kids go, Bo, listen to this one. The kids go, I go, hey, how you doing, little kid? He goes, dude, this is like a prison here. And I go, well, we're in the cafeteria having a good time. Yeah, this place is a prison. Well, the principal at that time heard it and got mad at me for having a kid on calling Caldwell High School a prison. And that's back before they didn't shut down the homecoming parade. But I was the bad person. I remember speaking to the superintendent who had just come into that town, and I said, well, Valley View doesn't have a problem with us. And then we went to a couple of elementary schools in Caldwell. Now, you pay money to send your kid to Caldwell High School, and you want to go to the homecoming parade, you want to have a football team, and nobody is covering this horrible story, just like nobody is covering the Venezuelan gang story. And what do? And look, I understand people are overworked. We tendency to take a look at everything with a cynical eye, and we go, hey, that's a big deal. That's a big story. That Caldwell High School canceled their homecoming parade. Well, Kevin, it's the gangs. I don't know if it's the gangs, but it's a story that needs to be told. Just like this guy, he goes, well, I went shopping and I had a good time. Well, good for you, Chuckles. Tell that to the poor people that paid money and they're getting ripped off and getting, being treated like it is Venezuela. If Venezuela was so great, they wouldn't be coming here. More on that in a minute. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Let's get you to work safely and on time. Good morning, Dave.
Good morning, Kevin. From the Idaho Pizza Company studio, traffic on the freeway looking a lot better right now. Canyon County, we do have an injury accident on Middleton Road at West Orchard, so watch for that in Canyon County. That's your traffic now. I'm Dave Burnett on KIDO Talk Radio.
Thank you very much, Dave. And coming up next hour, a new report from the Idaho Capital Sun. Report undocumented immigrants paid nearly $72 million in Idaho. That is local taxes in 2022. Oh, always so provocative. I love this. They say they paid higher taxes. Sure, but did they pay taxes for education? Did they pay taxes for medicine? Did they pay? See, again, another pro-illegal immigration take. We will counter it coming up. But, I mean, whether it's Aurora, Colorado or Caldwell, Idaho, how safe should we feel? Of course, in Idaho, unlike Colorado, we pack the heat. Go ahead. Make my day. Make our day. Give us a call next. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. 580 KIDO. Don't forget, coming up today, Sean Hannity, 1 to 4. Followed by our great friend, Lars Larson. If you missed our conversation with Lars Larson, you can always check out our podcast on the KIDO Talk Radio app or wherever you get a podcast. We always put up the show, and believe it or not, now we're on YouTube, which is great. Coming up, we'll take your calls. We are efforting Jared Halpern of Fox News Radio. We'll see if that happens. And one of the big stories we are talking about is the story out of Colorado, where we have the governor saying that everything is great in Aurora, Colorado, when in fact we have Venezuelan gangs taking over apartment complexes.
Well, I went shopping in Aurora yesterday. What a lot of Americans need to know is Aurora is over 400,000 people. It's Colorado's third largest city. Violent crime is down 2 years in a row. Car thefts are down 2 years in a row. It's a wonderful city. I'm there all the time. It's really a great, diverse city, and it's growing fast. It'll probably be the number 1 or number 2 city in Colorado over the next decade or two. So it's a great city. It's safer than it's been. And look, it's like any city. Chicago, L.A., mid-sized cities, Denver. Of course, there's been an issue with gangs for decades.
There we have it. We have the governor of Colorado claiming that Aurora is great. It's fun. It's exciting. What say you, Mr. President?
Hey, that's happening too. Matter of fact, it's going to get unequal. You're going to get a hell of a lot more, I think. But let's be clear. And I mean this sincerely. I was raised by my best friend in the world, my sister. She anyway, won't get into all that, but, I mean this sincerely. A woman can do anything a man can do.
Thank you, Joe Biden. Lucille joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Lucille.
Good morning, Kevin. I never cease to be amused by these lefties. So now we have the governor of Colorado telling us, first of all, he did not answer the question. Okay, typical. He went into, I went shopping. I was surprised he didn't break into the importance of the passage of time, but I suppose that line is already taken. But he went on saying how he went shopping. What does that have to do with anything? To begin with, I very much doubt that he went shopping any place near where these buildings that are taken now by Venezuelan gangs are. I doubt it. In the second place, I'm sure he went surrounded by, a thick wall of bodyguards. He's not Trump, so I'm sure he was very much taken care of in that sense. So I suppose he can go anywhere. And then he tells us that, everything is wonderful. It's, it's one of the best cities in Colorado, and it's so great. And the gangs have been there forever. Oh, I see. Colorado's most cherished tradition, I suppose, having gangs there for decades. You can't make this up, Kevin. You just can't make it up. Here's this man not answering the question, going into relevant tangents how he went shopping. And I just want to know how many of these gang members would he like to go shopping with? Here, let's go shopping to one of the malls and afterwards have a nice cup of coffee at Starbucks or whatever. You don't have to pay for it. You've got guns, convincing argument. And, I mean, you can't take it seriously, Kevin. So, gangs have been there forever, but crime is going down. Crime is going down, supposedly, thanks to the fact that there have been gangs there forever. If you can make that connection. These people, you have to hear them to believe them.
Well, like you said, the video is there, and what's being done about it? Who would have ever thought that we live in a country where this guy is talking about his shopping, you have people being threatened, and they're not doing anything about it?
No, because the important thing is that he can go shopping without risking his life. Joe Schmo, come on. He's just, and I love it how yes, these are nice people. These are the same people that soiled the undies when Trump said there were good people on both sides. Oh, Hitler. Oh, Nazi. But when they say that gangs that kill, maim, rape, blow people to bits, those are salt of the earth. Absolutely lovely people. So, I mean, I cannot understand. Well, I can in a way, but it's incredible to me that there are people that because they hate bad orange man, they want to have more of these jerks like this governor. But I mean that's Aurora's problem, as I said. Apparently, gangs are Aurora's cherished tradition. They've been there forever. So I suppose they were, that's when I see those bumper stickers. Refugees welcome, indeed. And how many of these refugees have you welcomed into your own home? It's all very well to slaughter them, on unsuspected citizens, but if you're so nice and so compassionate, how many of these people are living at your place now?
Lucille, a great call. We appreciate you. Kevin Mill in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Talking about security and safety and comfort and everything else. There are some disturbing videos that are now circulating with the vice president back in the day. Remember when she was running for the presidency and she was just the senator from California, I believe the junior senator from California. She was very, very out there. Remember, she was getting people released that had been put in jail for breaking the law. Kind of tough when you're the attorney general or a law enforcement person or a prosecutor. You're doing this. Well, here we have a new video where Kamala Harris is protesting against deporting migrants with Jussie Smollett. You remember what happened to good old Jussie.
Down with deportation, up with education, down with deportation, up with education, down with deportation, up with education, down with deportation, up with education.
Bring in the drums, everybody.
Deportation, up with education, down with deportation, up with education, down with deportation, up with education, down with deportation, up with education,
everybody
down with deportation, up with education, down with deportation, up with education, down with deportation,
Now remember, she's left of Bernie Sanders. And she's telling everybody that she has a gun. And that if you come into her house, she's going to shoot you. At 580-5436-580-KIDO. And if you think you have troubles, this is one of the reasons why we play these clips. We have the most liberal person possibly ever elected as president of the United States, the vice president currently, and thank goodness we've got this guy in office because he knows what he's doing.
So I want to thank you all for being here. And now, who am I introducing next? Who's next?
Distinguished guests, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India.
You heard that, though. That quickness, he gets mad. We in the Miller house call it zero to freak. Who? Hey, man. Take a pill, Joe. Whoa. We go to Eagle, Idaho. Mark, the watchdog of Eagle. Good morning. You're on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller. Good morning.
Good morning, Kevin. Listening to some of the callers today, I swear I'm living in a twilight zone. I think a lot of us are out there listening to KIDO. How many demon rat-controlled cities and states across this country have high crime? I mean, look at Chicago, Illinois. Look at San Francisco. Look at now Aurora, Colorado. Oakland, California. Harris's stomping grounds, right? Yeah, okay. Brian talked about earlier and mentioned something that I have mentioned how many times here at KIDO, that the Democrat, Globalist Socialist Party, they've imported chaos because they are the party of chaos. I got a neighbor in my own neighborhood. It's got a sign up that says Harris on one side of their garage. The other side it says Harris Walls. Kamala on one side and then Harris Walls. There was a sheriff. I sent you this from Fox News from about last week. There's a sheriff in Ohio who wanted the addresses of people who are for Kamala, who have signs out that they want Kamala and Waltz, elected. And he wanted the addresses because he wants to basically have an illegal sent to each one of their homes. You want this stuff, you want this chaos, you want all these illegals, then I think those people should dedicate their hearts and souls and their pocketbook to sponsoring these illegals that Harris and Biden and their globalist partners have, brought into our country. I just sent you also last week, about Harris and Biden and have purposely sent Cuban, Haitian, Nicaraguan, and Venezuelan migrants to red states that did not vote for them in the past fraudulent elections. Here's another one, folks. Democrats block common sense. Over 150, this is House Resolution 7909, by the way. This is just last week. Over 150 Democrats vote against deporting criminal illegal immigrants convicted of sexual offenses. Now, why would you do that? You know, it was a vote of 266 to 158. The bill, Violence Against Women by Illegal Aliens Act, saw every present Republican in favor of it, alongside 51 courageous Democrats who showed some sanity by crossing party lines to vote in favor of the bill, but apparently didn't get that two-thirds majority. Why? Again, how? It's just hard for me to see and fathom what is going on here. They vote against deporting illegals that create sexual... They'll just come back in anyway. We all know that. How many times have we deported these illegals that have committed crimes here, and then they come right back in again? So it's a joke. You know, Kevin, you really, you're a religious man. You have a lot of people who are out there believing God. I'm an agnostic. I know there's something superior than me out there that exists that put us here. I just don't have the same thought pattern that the Western religions preach to people about what.
Well, I mean, if you listen to this program, we got Russell saying, don't go to church, pro-life saying the churches are corrupted, and I think we have a lot of people have varying different faiths on this show.
Right, but that's what would make an interesting topic on Kevin Miller at KIDO. It'd be to talk one day about this. Let callers call in with their perspective of what they see. Because here's, I've mentioned this before. Here's Mark of Eagle bringing up on Kevin Miller at KIDO about Revelations. I don't go to church, but I read it as a kid.
Wait a minute. Yeah, you don't go to church and you don't believe in God, then why do you believe in Revelation?
No, well, because I've said it before, we seem to be living a predetermined, predestined, no free will life. I'm looking, what does it say Revelations about what's going to happen? There'll be so much chaos in this world. And who's bringing about that chaos? The globalist, socialist, Democrats over here and what's gone on in Europe. They're bringing chaos. Now, what happens? What does it say in Revelations when so much chaos is engulfing the world? Wars, famines, plagues, pestilence, food shortages, crime. That's when the beast makes his face. And that people will be willing to give everything they have basically to have some supposed security from what has happened in the world that they brought forth in the first place. I just sent you from early this morning. This is on, I know you don't like the Gateway Pundit, Kevin, but...
No, I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with the Gateway Pundit. You just quoted a lot, that's all.
Okay, well, yeah, because they have a lot of stuff that's factual and truthful out there. The other websites don't get, but here it is. UN votes on Pact for the Future, pushing totalitarian agenda and threatening sovereignty with digital controls and radical climate mandates.
Sure.
This is a vision for the future by your own United Nations. And
well, not only that, but the United States as well. Thank you for the call, Mark. Appreciate it. 580-5436-580-KIDO. And not that we're saying that Mark is wrong. However, our point of view is based on Ronald Reagan. Now, I guess you could say that the sign of the times were a mix of Reagan and Trump, if you will. At 580-5436-580-KIDO, there is a lot of evil going on in the world, and we have to hold people accountable. We have to say to ourselves, no, you're not going to do this. You're not going to lie to us. You're not going to tell us that having the Venezuelan gangs come in is wonderful. And you take a look at the failures of the Biden administration where there's no vetting of the Venezuelan gangs. Now, we have a lot of gangs. We have, the Van Buren boys, the MS-13, the Bloods, the Crips, the old school style gangs, all sorts of nefarious characters. And yet, Here we have the Venezuelans coming in because we have no relationship with their government. With all due respect, why are we letting, and I will say this, these people into our country? Well, Kevin, they're political refugees. You're telling me males 18 to 34, 18 to 49 with no families are political refugees that we should take care of, that we should allow to come in, and never mind the government funding that we're getting. You know, the beauty of this, and for me, because I'm an old man, I was born an old man, but I can remember the plight of our grandparents. And for the Generation Z people, it's probably the great-grandparents or the great-great-grandparents or whatever. That they came to this country, the Irish, the Italians, and they were given nothing. They lived in slums. There was no privilege. There was no Italian privilege. There was no white privilege. You worked. You want to talk about some people that suffered? Look at the Chinese and the West and what those folks went through. But they didn't come here to be scavengers and to plunder. They came here to build a better life. And that is what the shining city on the hill is supposed to be. And yet, unfortunately, under Joe Biden, we let the thugs, the malcontents, and the criminals come in. And then we have the home shopping channel in Colorado where the governor goes on Face the Nation, and we have Margaret Brennan, an intelligent young lady, shows her bias. She can try to grill our boy Tom Cotton, but she's going to let the shopping guy, the home shopping network governor, get away with that? Got to be kidding me. Thankfully, we don't live in Colorado. We live in Idaho. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Fox News brought to you by our friends at Beacon Plumbing. They say stop freaking. Call 580-KIDO. Thank you, everybody, for calling in. Don't forget Clay and Buck coming up right after our show. Then it's Sean Hannity, as you just heard, and Lars Larson and Glenn Beck. Still one of the more compelling clips that we've been playing all morning long. What happens when you don't know what you're doing and you're the commander-in-chief of the free world? Well, it happens to a lot of us. Maybe you're having a conversation with somebody. Maybe you're thinking to yourself, my goodness gracious, I can't remember who I was talking to. But what happens when you're the leader of the free world? What happens when all of a sudden you're supposed to introduce somebody? And I can remember, I mean, this happens to me all the time. Someone will come up to me and go, hey, man, how are you? There's somebody at work that they didn't know my name for the first 27 years, and they just say, hey, you. Can you say, hey, you, when you're supposed to be introducing the Prime Minister of India?
So I want to thank you all for being here. And now, who am I introducing next?
Wait for it.
Who's next?
Who's next? Tough guy. Hello? Hello, sir.
Distinguished guests, the Prime Minister of the Republic of India.
Yeah. I think that guy was wearing like a vest or something? The Prime Minister of India, very casual. Nobody wears a suit anymore, if you notice. Before we get to your calls here at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, I know a lot of you're not down with Bill Gates, or as we like to call him, the Bill Gates.
It's going to be the biggest change agent in the next 10 years. Mostly good stuff. Mostly. But will we get it right? Social media, we're still arguing about, hey, we shouldn't have let young kids use it as much. Right. And how do you balance free speech versus crazy stuff that, got people not to take vaccines, for example?
Right, exactly.
Speaking of crazy, Tea Party Bob joins us now on KIDO Talk Radio with Kevin Miller in the morning. Thank you for the call.
What is this crazy stuff?
Well,
you really think I'm crazy?
If the shoe fits.
Thank you so much. I had some new shoes on today.
Oh, thank you for sharing your shoe count.
Let me just first say good morning to you.
Oh, thank you very much. Good morning. Not a lot of people give us the pleasantries anymore, so thank you.
Well, we have to do that. That's just part and parcel of being politically correct. Anyway, Kevin, as I said many, many times before, we don't have any real journalists, only commentators who interject their own views or the views being promoted by the media companies they work for. So today's mainstream media has become a bunch of about as useless as a cheetah on a bull. They have become nothing more than a propaganda machine for the left. And what we need desperately in America are more efforts to bring the truth to the people. I think you'd agree with that. Companies like Newsmax are the perfect example of this type of media where They actually make a serious attempt to get at the truth and show both sides of the subject matter, which is why they have grown so rapidly and are doing a public offering. The only way we are going to change the current news media bias is to stop tuning into their programming and starve them to death. Just boycott them. I wanted to touch on this shooting in Birmingham. It's indicative of where we are heading in America as the crime wave sweeps over our nation. The gangs who have infiltrated our country illegally are not here to make things better. They're here to exploit the fact that all of our police departments are undermanned thanks to the leftist disparagement of the police, who have been leaving in droves, especially since the sanctuary cities came to life. There was a time when it was dangerous to walk the streets of New York City at night. But today, people fear walking the streets in broad daylight. They see the crime all around them coming from the illegal gangs who have invaded the city, who have no fear and will beat up police in broad daylight on busy streets. And as Trump says, the criminals are animals, and they are everywhere in our big cities and in our country, including the Treasure Valley, distributing drugs and wreaking havoc. You know, decades ago, we considered the mafia dangerous, but at least they had a code and didn't go around shooting people willy-nilly like these Venezuelan gangs. And Biden and Kamala have unleashed these criminals on our cities and should be held responsible for every crime they commit, yet they remain silent. We see the videos of the gangs in Aurora, Colorado, who have invaded and took over the apartment buildings looking for payment from residents for protection. Yet the mayor says nothing to see here. You know, I fear at some point we will see citizen vigilantes having shootouts with these criminals in our streets. We're living in a lawless nation where criminals are released with no bail for shooting, raping, and robbing people. It's only a matter of time before we are going to see a plethora of home invasions and in these sanctuary cities, and chaos will prevail. Now, this crime wave is hitting home, and I believe that Americans are sick and tired of dealing with this invasion and will go to the polls and vote for Trump, as they believe he is the only one who wants to deport these criminals and illegals who are taking our jobs, selling drugs to our children, and killing people while we pay for their food, shelter, and medical care. It's time for change, and I see that happening every day more in the polls, regardless of what the left says. The polls are telling you that the left is winning, but the real polls are telling you that Trump is going to take this election on November 5th. And God help us if he doesn't. I thank you again for my time, Mr. Miller, and hope you have a great day, and thank you for your show.
Yeah, I'm trying to really make a pithy comeback from that. I really can't. You know, it's a fascinating point in our political history where, you know, and if you take a look at Drudge right now, it's all these massive crowds and everything. And, you know, people are attacking the Electoral College, but I love how, and I love that Lars explained that to us last hour, but I really love how Alexander Hamilton and others created this system so it would not be mob rule. And whether it's on, I mean, I saw one ad for Donald Trump on College Game Day where it was Kamala, and they were talking about the transgendered, and they had the bald guy with a red dress next to her. She's been on a ton of stuff. We're seeing a massive propaganda push, and that would be one thing. But here's a candidate that has been rejected by the voters, is a failed person, and yet all the money is just flowing into her. It's a fascinating watch. And, you know, to quote our friend Fred Sanford,
"You're a big dummy there. I'm not kidding you. You're a big dummy."
Will America be a generation of voting dummies, not demanding accountability from the gun-toting Kamala?
Kevin, America already is a bunch of voting dummies. And I think if you look back through history, you can go back to the 60s, when we lost prayer in our schools, in the 70s, when Roe v. Wade came into being, and promiscuity was rampant among our teenagers. That's a whole world that was changed during that time. And as you get into the 80s and the 90s, these are the same people who grew up in that time who were taught about the liberal values in our schools and in our higher learning institutions, that they could pretty much do whatever they wanted. And it's also a time when the church started to decline in membership and numbers of people who attended on a regular basis. This has all happened within a span of 50, 60 years. We now have all of those people from the 60s and 70s who are running our country and our major corporations. This is why the significant change has taken place. And I wrote about this week. We are looking at the end game here. And if we don't change it this November 5th, we are going to see a country that is going to become socialist, not in a matter of years, but maybe in a matter of months if there is a serious insurrection that takes place. And that's what concerns me the most. We don't need to have that. We're supposed to be a nation of individuals who are law-abiding,
right?
Who are governed.
Well,
we're not a democracy. We're a republic.
I agree. Tea Party Bob, thank you for the call. More of your calls next. 580-KIDO, 580-5436. Kevin Miller on Idaho's talk station, KIDO Talk Radio. And Lars Larson. Keep it here for your chance again to be heard weekdays from 5 a.m. till 7 p.m. And don't forget Glenn Beck, always giving you the recap of the day's events beginning at 7. We love Glenn Beck. Big show last week. Glenn Beck celebrating Constitution Day. We'll take your calls now to the top of the hour at 580-5436, 580-KIDO. And we're starting to see this as we saw early during the Biden administration, which was equity, diversity, equity, inclusion. Now we have companies saying, we don't want diversity, equity, and inclusion. Last segment, if you were hearing before, if you were listening before Tea Party Bob jumped in on KIDO Talk Radio, that we were talking about Bill Gates saying there's something should be done concerning the media environment when people don't want to take vaccines because of the pandemic and everything else. And I think years from now, they're going to write history books on just the insane rewiring of our great nation. And before we get to this clip, I just want to take a moment to congratulate everybody who made it through the pandemic. And for me personally, I wish that we could have done a better job because, let's face it, our entire economy, our entire livelihood was on the line. And when you're in the midst of the stuff, or as the other S word they call it in the kitchen, when you're in the blanks, you don't see the greater picture of it. But remember, we have, this pandemic that came in, people dying. I believe people legitimately dying. Remember Kurt in Boise? If you don't remember Kurt in Boise, one of the great callers of this program, and he got the COVID. And I think he went to St. Alphonsus, and there was no room for him. So they put him in a closet, literally. And they said, well, we hope you make it, buddy. And it wasn't that they were not giving him the maximum amount of medical attention. There just wasn't room. Remember, Ada County, they didn't have enough room for the bodies. It was covered by the New York Times. Kevin, fake news. I don't think so. Cloverdale Funeral Home was used as an additional morgue for the county. And thank goodness that many children made it out. And then I go to the crisis of elderly care, where people, because let's face it, some people don't age well. Some people have to be put in the home. And thankfully, they have enough money that they can be put in a home. Otherwise, they go into a state facility or something of that nature. And if you've ever visited those places, it's a challenging job. Let me try that again. I did it, Joe Biden. It's a challenging job where, and especially the hospice care, where you have people that are there and they're not going to get any better. And then you have people that are mentally challenged. And you have people that come in and instead of doing what we do, which is figuratively serving pizzas every day, or, as we said, Patriot Ray really working, or Glenn in Nampa really working, or Lee Joe driving his big truck, or as Brian called him earlier, Leroy. And what you do, you have people that care for people that have been left unattended. And I go to during the pandemic where you had people in those homes that they couldn't get out. They were literally trapped. I remember we had a guy who called in and said, you know, I'm blind and they don't know that I'm calling you, but I'm on lockdown. And the way I get enjoyment of the day is the callers calling into the Kevin Miller program. Now, again, for some people, this is a show, and they would be correct. But for others, it's a vital means of communication locally. And we take that responsibility seriously. So when Bill Gates is talking about the vaccine, but we have come to a point in our life where we have to find a way. And I don't want to be Pollyannic to say that we need to bring back trust. All the news is bad. Now we have the media, saying that if you are in fact questioning somebody, then you should be ostracized. You should be deplatformed. You should not be heard. And here we have the Congresswoman from New York essentially saying the same thing. Boy, and I built all that up, and lo and behold, we're not going to be able to hear from her because the machine blew up. Let's go to Pro-Life. That never happens here on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Pro.
Good morning. Yeah, it's a nice morning. Tea Party Bob, he was talking about how things have changed, and I'd like to go back almost to the beginning. In original Christianity, when you became a Christian, you joined a group, I guess you'd say your congregation, your church, and you had a common economics. In other words, you had employee-owned business, and they took care of all of your social needs, everything. I mean, your medical needs, whatever. Now, see, that's been lost for so long that we don't even realize that ever happened. And if that never comes back, then we don't really have Christianity.
You're saying the social covenant where people would band together to help others.
Right. In fact, now, see, people getting married, they say, well, we're going to have separate bank accounts. We're going to have a prenuptial agreement.
Now, if you don't mind,
yeah,
you were married before, right?
Right.
Okay, so was I. So let me tell you a little bit about separate but equal bank accounts. Sometimes that's not a bad thing, especially when you find out that some of your money is being used to pay that other person's bills. I'm not saying that happened, but it does happen.
Yeah, but see, here's the problem. If you marry somebody that has your, I guess people say values, but if you have a common motive, in fact, maybe if your motive is to only live for truth, then you won't abuse the other person's economic interest in it. I mean,
well, really, what is the definition of being a spouse or being a parent? Isn't it selfless?
Yeah, because what do the scriptures say? You become one flesh. In other words, you become so united that you're the same person, and that's really how it's supposed to be. I'm totally convinced of that. I think there's a Heavenly Father and a Heavenly Mother, and they are really like the same person. They have a son, Jesus. They probably have some daughters. Family is really the basis of eternity and everything. But we've lost all of that. So I don't know. We're in big trouble just going along thinking that we can patch up our economics and our politics or something and really get somewhere. But we can't, because our technology is so great. But I guess you'd say our spirituality and our Christianity is broken, and that won't work. That'll destroy us. So I'm just.
I don't know if that really has anything to do with what I was talking about.
You about separate bank accounts?
No, we were talking about the media and how the government now wants to control the media, although the media is controlled by progressive people anyway. That's a far stretch from you and your dictates on family and marriage.
Yeah, I know it's a far stretch, but you take like the media, they run all of these drug, ads, and the reason they're running all those drug ads is because
drugs pay the bills.
Yeah, that means the drug companies control the media. That's what it really means.
Sure.
And so, I mean, I'm totally against a pharmacy, but
what are you for?
Jesus Christ.
All right.
I'm for Heavenly Father. I'm for family, and I like churches. I go to church every week.
Well, thankfully, we appreciate that, pro-life. We're not condemning churches anymore, which is a good thing.
I think that several members of Congress in some of my discussions have brought up media literacy because that is a part of what happened here. And we're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment so that you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation. It's one thing to have differing opinions, but it's another thing entirely to just say things that are false. And so that's something that we're looking into.
There we have it. Let's forget about the debt. Let's forget about the deficit. We're going to look into disinformation. Of course, the Russian collusion, delusion, fusion was fake news. Was there any fallout over that? When they said that Donald Trump was a paid agent of Vladimir Putin? Was there any fallout over the lies perpetrated by Christopher Steele, who was employed by Hillary Clinton? Was there any fallout over that? Oh, that's right. The people that were trying to tell the truth about Hunter Biden, the people that were trying to tell the truth about the laptop, they were deplatformed. Think about the world that we live in, and this is why we have to have faith in God. Thank you, Lord, for blessing us. And I know there's a lot of negativity, but think about this. Think of the world where they almost had us. If Hillary wins, we never would have known about Ukraine and Joe Biden and anything else. If Hillary wins, chances are Elon Musk doesn't buy X. Elon Musk buys X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it. And then we find out the real skinny. Even the Zuck, when he's not riding his little bicycle in Sun Valley, Mark Zuckerberg has said, "Whoa, golly, the government told us to do it." And what do we do? Where's the guts? And of course, it's easy to be a person emanating from your speakers to say, "Where's the guts?" But if you're Mark flippin' Zuckerberg, what do you worry about? The government. Well, nobody wants to get Howard Hughes. Nobody wants to get Preston Tuckered. Those people stood up for the righteousness. I mean, how much money do you really need? Now we have a congresswoman from New York who, again, she will run in 4 years. If Harris doesn't make it, this is, and I don't say this in a nefarious way as the Democrats label Donald Trump. I say this as a political threat. She is the most likable Democrat that's going to come out. Well, Kevin, we've got the guy in Kentucky. We've got Gavin. Gavin's going to be almost 60, which might be the perfect age. But could you imagine a ticket of Newsom, Cortez? I could see that. In the world that we live in today, AOC is the perfect politician. She's for the Green New Deal, doesn't really know much. Again, is really full of herself, ostentatious, I think they call it, when she talks about how all the men look at her because she's attractive. And she has mastered social media at a young age. If not, if you want to take a look at the real AOC, take a look at a documentary on Netflix called Taking the Hill, I believe it's called. And it was a story of 3 or 4 women that ran for Congress. AOC had the money behind her. Gee, where'd that come from? And she won. But it's a fascinating look at the inside of this. So, in the old days, it was we as individuals have to collectively come together to solve a problem today, it's the government.
You know, I do think that several members of Congress in some of my discussions have brought up media literacy, because that is a part of what happened here. And we're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment. So that
right. Well, what about all the lies and the threats against conservatives? If you ever want to talk to anybody who's in the public light, and in Idaho, whether they're elected or not elected, they're an influencer, ask them about the threats against their life from the online audience. And it's not just the lefties. I got a buddy of mine, I won't say his name, he's a lib, but all of a sudden you have people condemning him, calling him all sorts of names, making irresponsible allegations against a person that is a pillar of our community. You're not going to rein that in. You just can't give those people any credibility. What are you going to do? Are we going to have a giant commission, the Ocasio-Cortez commission, where she will decide what is true, what isn't? Already the media companies shadow ban the gun people, shadow ban the conservatives. So when you put up a post, 90% of the people don't see it. And now we're going to have AOC take a look at this. This is why we have to continue to be involved, continue to pray. And in Idaho, of course, we have to make sure that we don't do the ranked choice voting, but that's another story. Coming up tomorrow, Dave Petzo, the market had the best week ever. Gee, wonder what he's going to talk about. Theo Wold will join us, our weekly guest. He just had a big appearance talking about ranked choice voting. We'll get his thoughts on what the people told him. And, of course, as always, the most important person is you. That's right. You're number one with us each and every morning with Kevin Miller. And we appreciate you. We know you have a lot of choices, so thank you for making us a big or large part of our day. You're a great part of our family. God bless, keep the faith, and remember, Kevin Miller loves you.